Good evening, everyone. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, June 2nd meeting for the Bothell City Council. We expect to be joined by Councilmember Lamb in about 2 hours, if all goes well. If not, he may not join us, but at this point, absent and excused. And Mr. Agnew is absent and excused as well this evening. So, meeting agenda approval first. I'll jump in. Our executive session was for the potential of personnel matters, and I think it'd be best to have that conversation with the full council. And so for this evening, I will not have an executive session. Councilmember Sandberg?
I'm in support of that, but the public might have looked at the agenda and expected visitor comments to start at 6:55. So if we do have members of the audience who arrive a little bit later, maybe at 6:55, we could open up some time for for visitor comments.
Or potentially we just take consent agenda first.
Okay. And then one more item. For next week, I will be late to the meeting, so I won't be able to participate in an executive session at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay. Well, we'll have to schedule that for the end then.
Okay.
Okay. So as of tonight, any other changes? Yes, Councilmember Ram.
Just wanted to pull AB 15-070 from the consent agenda.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Councilmember Sandberg.
I wanted to pull the April 14th minutes from the consent agenda, and then I would like to add a discussion about a parks-only bond, and I think that would be appropriate during our public engagement plan discussion. And I would like to move the stormwater facility charge and the street maintenance public engagement plan before the comp plan discussion. I think that those might move a little quicker, and then if the staff who are there supporting those items, if they would like, they would be able to leave a little earlier than waiting through the hour-long discussion of comp plan.
Well, why don't we just add that on the AB 15072 right after consent? Just try to build up that time for what people are expecting for visitor section.
And then I wanted to add a discussion regarding the Forterra announcement and the WIRA 8 letter email that we received within the last couple of days regarding the Senate's budget to preclude using certain grant funds for land acquisition, with the idea if we need to draft a letter from the city that we can discuss that possibility.
Well, who's leading the discussion on the WIRA 8? Would you expect staff to be prepared this evening?
I could lead it.
What is it you want to just discuss the letter?
So you're the chair, so why not?
WIRA 8, yeah.
Of WIRA.
Yeah, I could just go into some discussion about the current situation in Olympia, about using state funds for acquisition of salmon recovery lands, basically.
Okay.
I can get more detail if you guys need it now.
Are you all interested as well? Yep. So maybe we'll, depending on time, have that right after the 072 that we just moved, or if we get to the point where we are at visitor section, we just take it at the end of the meeting. Sound good? Nothing?
Can I add something for the projected agenda?
Yes, right after everybody gets a point to speak on tonight's agenda. Do you have any other? You two? Councilmember Evans?
So, Mayor, as I understand it, we're going to discuss the consent agenda. Then we're going to go to item...
We'll talk about the two pooled items, which is item A and item E.
Okay.
And then go to AB 15072, which is the consider adoption of the ordinance expanding downtown revitalization sub-area.
And then I think Councilmember Sandberg, didn't she ask that, or 9 is not being moved up then at this
Not
point?
at this
We'll leave
point.
9 where it is. We're going to
9
add
was
some
where it
bond
is.
issue discussion on that is
Yeah.
what it was. Okay, great, thank you.
Deputy Mayor, anything?
No, I think I'm keeping up with the changes.
Okay, good.
Any more, I'm going to want to program.
Projected agenda. City Manager, the interlocal agreement extension between City of Bothell and Woodinville Fire and Rescue.
Yes, that is proposed for adoption this evening.
Okay, so I did not.
It's simply an extension. It was a late arrival on the dais tonight. Simply an extension of a current agreement, only affecting the date.
Bob, would you be willing to speak on that right after 072? Okay. So, Councilmember Sandberg, projected agenda?
I would like to request presentations from Metro and Sound Transit regarding, Sound Transit has a potential bond measure that's coming in 2016, and I believe their comment period is quickly approaching close, and so I think it would be helpful for us as a council to receive presentations, at least from Sound Transit, so that we and the public can give feedback about what we would like to see in that measure. And then also similar presentation from Metro about their service projections for our area, much like what we received from Community Transit a couple of weeks ago.
Totally agree. So, leave it to staff to contact the county to have those presentations. What about, I was just met with several mayors today. They're all working on their comp plans, getting them done. My understanding is this has to be complete by June 30th. And we have our last meeting on the schedule for June 16th. We don't have anything scheduled for June 9th for it. So I'm thinking that we should add time on June 9th to that discussion so we can come to a final decision on June 16th. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yes, because on the June 9th item, there's a traffic concurrency discussion,
Yep.
and so I think we should appropriately notice, because I'm sure that will bleed into other comp plan discussions as
Yep.
well.
So 2 are in favor. Anybody else? Yeah? Okay. So City Manager would like to add time on June 9th for comp plan so we can get to the 16th with approval. Any other projected agenda changes? All right. Seeing none. We had a motion, or I need a motion for consent. So we have a motion by Councilmember, or Deputy Mayor Spivey, second by Councilmember Evans. Everybody can place their vote. That would be for items B, C, and D. Clerk can display. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously with Councilmembers Lamb and Agnew absent and excused. So the first item was pulled in order, I guess, was the minutes for April 14th. I think that was Councilmember Sandberg.
Yes, thank you. So Laura has put inside your folders a suggested language change, and this is on page 6. And the original language says, consensus was to have a citizen initiative ballot and to have the new Parks and Recreation Director look into organizing a citywide sponsored event. And I would like that to change to say a majority of council preferred the citizen initiative process, because consensus means unanimity, and there wasn't unanimity in having a citizen initiative ballot, but there was a majority. And then there was consensus to have the new Parks and Recreation Director look into organizing a citywide sponsored event.
Any other comments? Councilmember Evans?
Yes, just in general regarding this item, I don't know, we get a lot of emails on this, and we have people testifying things, and I don't know if it's possible for the clerk to keep those names and addresses somewhere. What I'm thinking is potentially there could be a group of those people get together and work together to continue on. So I don't know how much work that would be to begin a list of those, maybe go back a year or so, and if it's clear what their name and address is, and as people testify, if they want to be added to the list, or somebody from that list wants to move forward with a initiative, maybe they would have a team of people to do that. So is that, I don't know if that's a problem to city manager. Is that a problem to pull those names and maybe go back a year and pull some of those people who testified on the fireworks issue? At least those people, we could let them know that there's a group of people interested, then on their own they could get together and do whatever they may want to do. Would that be a problem to go back and pull some of those names from public testimony?
It may take some research depending on how many years you wanted to go back, since we don't have a database that would simply allow us to type in.
Well, I'm just saying a year.
We could do that within a reasonable period of time, yes.
And just as a reference point for the public, if somebody did want to take action, there would be at least some people, or a group of people that they could contact and go from there. So if that's not too much of a problem, I'd like to see that built, and we could keep it at the clerk's office or whatever, and then maybe something could transpire from that. So a little bit off of this, but I'm fine with the change as proposed.
Okay. Anyone else? I'll make a motion.
I move to approve the April 14th, 2015 minutes as amended.
Any discussion? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote. See if it works this time. Clerk can display. How about all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Passes unanimously. Next item that was pulled was AB 15072 by Councilmember Ray Hume to consider approval of a 2015 community survey questions. Councilmember Ray
So
Hume.
I brought this up last time this came before us, and I just wanted to make a motion to alter question number 26, which is on page 49 of our packet. And the way it reads right now, it asks, what race would you classify yourself as? And then it says, are you black, African American, white, Caucasian? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to change the word race to ethnicity, and then delete the words black and delete the words white. And that's in the form of a motion.
Can we do that as an amendment to the main motion?
Oh, yes, we don't have a main motion, do we? Oh, no, that is a motion.
You want to? Okay, and
I do want to make clarification because we did talk about it. We're supposed to come back with clarification. So before you maybe.
Okay, that's fine. No yield.
Clarification from our assistant city manager.
Yeah, you can certainly you can do that. What the consultant advises is that you won't be able to conduct a cross comparison with census information, but that's of limited value, so it's certainly doable.
What do you think of that?
I get uneasy because the term race or the use of that is inappropriate. I don't think it's appropriate to ask people what color their skin is. And I've been doing some recent research on race and how it's been a tool to try to separate people. And genetically speaking, since the Genome Project, it's very clear that genetically we don't have a lot of drift across different people from different continents, so there's no point in asking people what race they are. It's a construct that's really needs to be we need to get rid of it, basically. And having it in here, I feel like I'm not doing my job as a government official to allow it to be in there. So,
Councilmember Evans and then Sandberg.
So in our past surveys, we have coordinated with census information or to look at that. Is that correct?
Well, what it does is the U.S. Census asks questions based using the same wording that you see here.
Exact same
So
wording?
I would recommend that you avoid tampering with the language. If you don't like the question, probably the best thing to do is just to remove the question.
And I just, maybe a question of Andy, since he's been looking into this a little bit. Is there discussions, or is this proceeding on to the federal level to change this? Do you know, or any background in that at all?
well, I hope from the national media that we're starting to get the idea that it's not okay to ask people, to bracket people out by race in this country. That doesn't exist in the first place, and it just perpetuates racism, which is also just inappropriate. So,
Well, I guess it may perpetuate racism in some people. It doesn't in my eyes. I don't see it that way myself personally. And the only concern I have is I do think there is a benefit of being able to coordinate with the federal census and have that data combined. I mean, if it changes at the federal level, that'd be great. I mean, I guess that's just comments.
Councilmember Sandberg, then Peter.
I think what Councilmember Rayum is proposing is simply changing the word from race to ethnicity, with the understanding that we all belong to the same human race. However, we might identify differently with different ethnicities. And the fact that you change the word from race to ethnicity does not preclude the surveyor from matching it to the census data. If you change the word from race to ethnicity, he can just know in his mind, Bothell changed the word from race to ethnicity, and still make the connection. And if you remove black and white, the same thing. Black versus, it's black / African American and white / Caucasian. I'm sure that our surveyor can make the simple assumption that our categories correspond to the categories in the federal census. I think it's just a word change to reflect that we believe everybody is a member of the same human race. And so I will support that amending motion, but I wanted to make sure that in the recommended action, it says we're authorizing the city manager to conduct the surveys with questions as drafted and revised. And I wanted to be clear that is the staff recommendation still to do the mail survey? We had a lot of conversation about a telephone survey. And so is it recommendation to continue with the mail survey?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I can make a motion.
Mr. Trozen would like to first, and we can turn the floor back to you.
Well, no, I did get my piece out when Councilmember Evans asked his question.
Okay.
So I would just, again, the words, while I, would respectfully agree in some ways that's irrelevant. There are definitions of the word race and ethnicity which are used by the federal government. So I just be careful about interchanging those.
Okay.
I'd like to move that we authorize the city manager to conduct a mailed survey with the questions as drafted. And then if there's a second, we can do amendment.
I'll second it.
As drafted, are you not going to change the language suggested?
Oh, well, I was going to make the amended motion, so.
Well, might as well just throw it
Okay, amended to change in question number 26, change the word race to ethnicity and strike the words black and white in the choices.
And I'll second it.
Okay. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I already have, thank you.
Councilmember Rayam?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
I just have a question. If we strike the word black, where does a Caribbean islander fall in? Are we leaving people out? If we just say African American, what about a Caribbean islander? What about somebody else that is of another ethnicity that maybe black would have covered, but African American doesn't? I mean, I understand what you're saying, but at some point, if we're trying to get actual data to work with, we have to be kind of vague in some ways to capture more people into a category of some sort. So I'm just I'm wanting somebody to sway me one way or the other at this point through deliberation, because there's again, our federal government uses this. There's I guess it could be in other, but
You're free to make an amending motion if you like.
well, like I said, this is deliberation. I'm asking,
There's a
I'm
motion on the
looking for
floor.
some deliberation to sway me one way or the other here, because I'm pretty non-committal on this one so
right.
far.
Councilmember Evans? On the motion that's on the floor, which would be pass this survey as amended with question 26 changed to ethnicity and black and white crossed off.
I'm inclined to support the motion on the basis that it still can, based on what Councilmember Sandberg said, who I wish the surveyor was here to confirm that they still can make that cross-check reasonably. I guess that's the only hesitation I have in supporting the motion, but we may be splitting hairs here.
Cool. I appreciate your intent, but I don't have any issue with these questions. I serve around the world in Africa and Kenya and Philippines 2-3 times a year. I love people of all different races and ethnicities. So as I look at this, I don't see it as offensive. Some may. I don't mind the change of what ethnicity would you classify yourself as, but Deputy Mayor makes a good point of if we take a couple of those more general comments out of there, it does potentially cause an issue. So at this point, how it's written, I wouldn't vote for it. I would be more open to vote for it if we added another box that said other or something to that extent, but I think it does limit some people in our world who would be able to check one of these boxes. And sadly, labels are, in our society, labels can limit people, but also, those are how we quantify things from time to time. Deputy Mayor?
I'm looking at question 26, and it does have a box for some other race or combination of races, please specify. So with that being said, I will support it, but I just want to be clear that there was just a motion, not a motion and an amending motion. You just clarified your motion, correct?
It's all in one.
So, okay. Yeah, I'll because of the other at the bottom of the question, I'll support this.
Combination. Do you want to change the combination of races now after reviewing
I have a question for you. So would you feel more comfortable if we kept in black and white and then just changed race to ethnicity?
that? I think that certainly works.
Well, that's up to Councilmember Rayum.
I changed the last sentence to say ethnicity.
Yeah, can I deliberate for just
Yeah.
a second here to Deputy Mayor? So the idea behind removing the words black and white is because the pigment of your skin doesn't really dictate it shouldn't dictate what race or ethnicity you are. And that's why I wanted those two words specifically taken out. If you want to leave race in, I'd be more comfortable than having the words black and white in here. And then you are right that at the bottom there, it really should just say other instead of some other race or combination of races. So I don't know if that sways you at all, but that's kind of my thought process behind it was asking what color the pigment of somebody's skin isn't really asking them what race they are or ethnicity they are. So that's why I wanted to strike those two words. And then, so now that I have the floor, I'll make an amending motion to change the last box of the question 26 to just say other, and please specify, and deleting the rest of it.
I'd second that. Any deliberation? So the amending motion is to change the last sentence to just simply say other. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So passes unanimously. So now the underlying motion.
Mayor, I'd
Yes.
like to make an amending motion.
Okay.
I'd like to add one more box in there to put in Hispanic.
Hispanic.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Good catch. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just think that that's a large part of our.
Peter?
Just
It's interesting, though. Why wouldn't it fall into 26?
because it's the difference between race and ethnicity. Because Hispanic is actually Caucasian. Caucasian race.
We're really messing this whole thing up, aren't we? All in the name for. So,
If the seconder's okay, I'll withdraw my motion, my amendment.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I noticed it too, but I figured that previous question was there because of the census, so just leave that one out.
So we're
I think
back
it's fair to say
we're
we
back
don't
to
love
the underlying
everybody up
motion.
here is our point, yeah. Good. So you have the underlying motion, which is amending question 26 to say what ethnicity, crossing out black, white, and then now there is an other rather than the last sentence that used to be there. Any other further comments? Deliberation? No? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No abstentions, so passes unanimously. Peter, hopefully we didn't do too much damage. All right, thank you. So next on our revised agenda this evening, we are moving up AB 15072.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So we've gotten, several members of the public have kind of filtered in, so they feel like they didn't miss visitor comment. We're
You didn't miss visitor
You didn't
comment.
miss visitor comment.
We're trying to delay it to when we advertise to 6:55 or so. Welcome. We are ready for your presentation. Oh, I'm still getting this set up. So for the good listening audience, this is to consider adoption of ordinance expanding the downtown revitalization area subbasin and amending section 18.11.045 of the Bothell Municipal Code regarding the downtown stormwater capital facilities charges. And we're joined this evening by Don Feen, our with Public Works, Utility and Development Services Manager. And Don, you probably should be the most thankful staff member this evening that we moved you probably from the hour of 9:30 to 6:30.
Thank you.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to apologize for the cap. I had a minor surgery to the top of my head.
You look good. It's a Bothell hat.
Thank you. Don Feen, Utility and Development Services Manager, and this is a presentation regarding the revisions to BMC 18.11.045, Downtown Stormwater Capital Facilities Charge. And to recap the presentation, a month ago, 2012, the council adopted the citywide and the downtown stormwater capital facility charges. The downtown stormwater capital facility charge was established to fund the Horse Creek storm system improvements. Staff believes it's necessary to revise the downtown subbasin to accurately reflect the benefit area. And staff recommends expanding that benefit area associated with the downtown stormwater capital facility charge to include the northern parcel of downtown Lot O, was previously omitted, Popkini Stadium parcel, which the school district has requested to be a part of the new boundary, and park at Bothell Landing, which is part of the downtown revitalization area. And it's benefited by the Horse Creek improvement flowing through that property. So this would be the new area. The shaded areas represent the areas that are added. And that's all I have right now, but I'd be glad to answer any questions, and we recommend approving the ordinance of the new benefit area. The issue regarding the downtown stormwater capital facility charge increase is not being presented tonight. It's not part of this discussion, but will be brought back for a study session in September.
Great, thanks so much, Don. Anybody have questions? Councilmember Sandberg, then Ray.
I had the opportunity to speak with Don this afternoon, and he clarified for me that what we're doing tonight is just redrawing the map. But the interesting point that I learned in talking with him is that I agree that we need to add the northern portion of Lot O, because that was an omission. But adding more acreage to the benefit charge area can decrease the per acre cost of the capital facility charge, because it spreads it out. It spreads the cost out over a greater area, which can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. I mean, it can be a good thing if more development is encouraged to develop in the downtown area because it's not so expensive. However, it could potentially result in increases to citywide ratepayers, because if I understand correctly, our citywide ratepayers, they pay into the stormwater fund through their stormwater rates, and a portion of that funds the Horse Creek improvements as well. So I'm just wondering, in the so this meeting, this agenda item is just discussion of the boundary of the map. But in September, that's when you're going to be talking about the potential increases or changes to the capital facility charges for new development, capital facility charges citywide for all ratepayers. Is that what's going to happen in?
Just for that would be specifically for the downtown. The annual update to the fee resolution, which would include the citywide, would be October, November time period, the annual increase.
So coming in the fall, we'll be talking specific rate increases or rate changes for the downtown area and citywide ratepayers.
The citywide most likely would just be by inflation, increased by inflation.
Okay,
CPI.
thanks.
Councilmember Ray.
Just more out of curiosity, I recalled when this came to the study session, both of the items, the expansion of the surcharge area and the actual fee, were together, and so how come they were separated? And so we're taking this one on now and then one later in September?
Two different issues, and the actual, I thought it would be better to bring the other one forward at a separate time, closer to the period when we look at our annual fee resolution update.
Okay, thanks.
Deputy Mayor or Councilmember Evans? Mr. Evans.
Yes, Don, I'm just curious, the school district has expressed interest in being in the benefit area, is that correct?
Yes.
Are you aware, are there proposed future plans being considered for that site?
They are considering it in a long-term aspect. I don't know, Steve Morikawa might know more about that. I don't know if Steve, you could. He spoke to the school district, and they brought it up to him. So.
In terms of, there's nothing planned per se, but in our discussions with them, one of the concerns they had is at some point the field may have to be resurfaced, and that could trigger stormwater requirements. And if they had to detain the water for the entire field, that would be quite pricey. So they wanted to make sure in the long term, they're thinking long term on remodels and rebuilding like that.
So did we acquire an area for right away or whatever for the stream from them?
Yes. So how we worked it out was a lot of the Horse Creek between McMinimans and Popkini Field is on their side of the property line. And instead of the city paying cash for that easement, we basically said in the future, if you're going to rebuild, do your turf or whatever would trigger stormwater requirement, detention, in lieu of paying you cash, you will take a credit in the same amount for that future fee.
Okay. Which sounds good. Could that same principle be applied to the park? Because there was construction through the park. Park property was used, I believe, for that, and it seems like a credit should be applied there also.
You know, I think that one gets a little more interesting because the city itself owns the property. But I think, you know, trying to be objective about it, there are also things the stormwater utility paid for in the park that hasn't been accounted for as well. As an example, we're relocating Horse Creek, which frees up the park, not the passive use area, but the active use area, put it all in one space so you could build buildings there. Horse Creek is also putting back trails. It's not just putting back the trail exactly in the location that it is today. It's actually adding trails in the vision of the master plan. So I guess if we wanted to do that kind of accounting, we'd have to account for what benefits were also received as well.
Well, maybe something you can look at when you bring the rates back to us or something. But okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor? No?
Just a question. If the North Shore School District has a credit that they could apply in lieu of paying a capital facilities charge because of the easement granted to us for Horse Creek, why do we have to include that area then in the charge area if they're sort of pre-set up for a
Well, I think what
charge.
Steve is saying is that, so they have a credit because for compensation for the easement, so they would apply it towards the facility charge.
Anybody make a motion? Mr. Evans. The recommended action is to adopt the proposed ordinance expanding the downtown revitalization area subbasin.
It's exactly my motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote, we'll see if it works this time. And clerk display. It may just not work with these two folks absent. So all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Don, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest
you.
of your evening. Next, moved up on the agenda is AB 15074. Our Fire Chief Bob Van Horn has a presentation regarding our interlocal agreement extension between the City of Bothell and Woodinville Fire and Rescue for administrative services. We'll just take 2 minutes just to get situated here. Once you're ready.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for adding this at the last minute. Going to be very quick. This is just a 2-month extension to July 31st of the agreement that we've had with Woodinville Fire and Rescue to provide Fire Chief and Deputy Chief of Operations Services. The only thing, as City Manager mentioned earlier, is the date has been changed. So staff is requesting that you approve this. As to why 2 months, I believe it's tied into the negotiations that the city will be having with the fire districts regarding the RFA on the equity model, and they want to see if those are fruitful. My guess is that after those negotiations are done, then I will possibly be bringing back another extension, and hopefully it'll be longer than 2 months. So,
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Sandberg and then Councilmember Evans.
It's a little bit off topic, but I know there are probably members of the public who are interested. What was the result of the RFA Planning Committee meeting a couple weeks ago, Thursday, so following our Tuesday
Yes.
meeting and decision?
the Planning Committee met. They were pleased with the city's position, that they were willing to entertain putting more money into the equity model. And they directed that one person from each district be assigned to enter into negotiations with the city manager. So I believe that as of tonight, North Shore will choose their individual. I know who is going to be representing District 10 and Woodinville Fire and Rescue. So negotiations should be starting fairly soon. The next meeting is scheduled for July 23rd, and they're hoping that the negotiations will be over by that point, understanding that council will be going into an August recess period. So they're hoping that negotiations will be done by July 23rd. So.
Great. Councilmember Evans.
Thank you, Chief. I guess I have no problem with this extension, but knowing how long the RFA process has taken so far, and we're all hopeful that maybe we have a resolution by the end of July, we may not. I was just wondering, and you covered it generally, but I would have thought maybe there could even been an extension in here for another 2-month period or something. I guess if the RFA is not, that issue is not resolved by the end of July, then either you will come back to us with another extension, or that'll be the end of your work with the city of Woodinville. Is that correct?
To be correct, it's Woodinville Fire and Rescue. It's not the city of Woodinville.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's a fire district, but that would be my assumption also. It would either expire due to time, or I'd be coming back with another extension.
And I guess the only reason I question not having an additional 2 months in here is because, you know, this negotiation regarding the RFA and the equity issue, it could go up through the end of July, and we may not have a meeting, or we won't have a meeting in August to talk about this. But I guess as long as Woodinville is okay with this process, and we are, it just seems like maybe a little thought that if it wasn't resolved by the end of July, that there could be an additional 2-month or whatever extension. But if no one's concerned about that, then it's fine the way it is, I guess.
Anyone else? Anybody wish to make a motion?
Move the recommended action.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Looking at the hour, we've done a good job delaying, and we do have a full room today. I do have several sign-up sheets, up to 5. If there are others who wish to speak this evening, you can keep them in your lap for now, and just when we ask you to come up, you just hand them to the clerk and then head to the microphone. Make sure the green light is on. And as always, we ask that speakers keep their comments to 3 minutes out of respect to each and every person who is here to speak. First person on the sign-up sheet is Mr. Howard Hughes. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you for the opportunity to come here and express my concern about this situation. And I'm here in concern about the intersection over on 132nd Avenue and 180th Street. And for those unfamiliar with those numbers, 132nd is running north and south. It goes over the 522 and goes into Woodinville over there by the Dairy Queen. And the 180th Street comes up the hill from Home Depot and the 24-Hour Fitness, and it intersects with a T. And I live about 3 blocks in that intersection. I've been there for 33 years. And I must say that I've been driving now for over 50 years, and I'm approaching 1 million miles. Never in my experience have I ever experienced an intersection where drivers that are coming up that 180th Street that intentionally, blatantly, defiantly block that intersection. And so if you're headed south on 132nd, there's 3 lanes. Left lane goes into Woodinville. The middle lane goes onto the 522 on-ramp. And I did have an experience there once where a man driving a pickup truck blocked that intersection. And I come down and I blew my horn. What I didn't notice was about 5 cars in front of me was a sheriff's deputy. And as he got out of the car, his cruiser, and as soon as he did, the man with the pickup put his it in reverse and backed up. And times that people, they can, most every time that I have a blocked intersection, there's plenty of room behind them that they could back up and alleviate the situation, but they will not. And furthermore, the last revision to that intersection was about 10 or 12 years ago. And for a few weeks after that, I saw it monitored by the police, Bothell Police. And since then, I have never seen that intersection monitored by Bothell Police. Now, I realize that this is probably a low priority for the police department, but I still think that 2 or 3 times a month for an hour, and I think you could go a long way to alleviating this situation. And I have spoke with my neighbors for it, and they, feel the same way. And so I would like to see that monitored by the police department and writing out some tickets for people that are blocking that intersection, or take down those signs.
Thank you, Mr.
Take
Hughes.
down those cameras and put them someplace where they'll be utilized.
Yeah, we have a question for you.
Actually, I have a question for staff, because I don't know if you live in the Pioneer Hills community, but I have been through that intersection, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I'm wondering if there's another thing that our Public Works Department could do at that intersection, which, and if Public Works can look into this, is if we can paint on the roadway a hatched line where it says "Do not block," in addition to policing of that intersection as well, to make it really clear to the drivers that they are not allowed to pull through that intersection and block. So if we could have staff get back to us on that, that would be, I'd be interested in knowing the answer for that.
Great.
And so we probably won't get the answer tonight. But
My comment is that intersection is just what it is. It's about as good as you can do with it now from a traffic point of view. But I think the issue is that I think that the police department needs to cite some people for blocking that. And I think if you start doing that a little bit, it'll change.
I've seen some flared tempers in that intersection. I work right down the street, so it's pretty interesting.
Did you see any police monitoring the intersection?
I saw people self-monitoring, which is unfortunate.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Next on the sign-up sheet is Judith Carpenter. We have your address for the record.
It appears that the sale of the back nine from Mayor Freet's investor group to Forterra is looking very positive. I want to personally thank our mayor for listening to the Bothell citizens and for being a good corporate citizen in this land sale. The sale is based on the Mayor Freet's investment group's acceptance of the appraised price, which is paramount for the completion of this acquisition. One Bothell and the citizens that supported them need to be recognized for this remarkable progress. One Bothell's goal was to be able to work with the city to acquire both the front and back nine in perpetuity for many environmental friendly uses such as recreation, education, fish and wildlife habitat. And I thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Yes?
I also wanted to say thank you to the mayor for agreeing to enter into a potential sale agreement. I really appreciate you doing that. I think that's really great for the community, so thank you.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to thank One Bothell's efforts in all of the work that they've done in preserving that property. So thank you. Thank you to both.
So next on the sign-up sheet is Elizabeth Iselin. Forgive me for the pronunciation of your name. You'll correct me, I hope.
You did better than most. It's Iselin.
Iselin. I like it.
Anyway, my name is Elizabeth Iselin, as just stated. I am here just to make some comments in regards to the proposed property development on 124th and 160th. If I know a couple weeks ago there was another council meeting, and there were some council meetings a couple months past. I just want to say that, our home is directly downhill and next to this proposed development. There's a lot of water issues, and as we have stated before, when we get any kind of rain, whether it's heavy or just a long, slow rain, we have so many issues with the runoff. So there's the surface water, the rainwater, and the water on the surface. And some of our concerns is that putting in a high-density development with the asphalt, the roofs, the sidewalks, right now the ground is so saturated anyway, it can't absorb it. And what happens is, because we're downhill, we get massive flooding. Our house is flooded several times, despite doing improvements to it. The proposed homes that are downhill from this development, these 3-story, I believe they were looking for having zoning for up to 3 stories. I mean, they would be looking right down into our homes because we're downhill. Right now, the neighborhood is approximately 7,200 square feet. Parcels is the smallest. Some of them are much larger. And, I believe that the zoning in this area, because of the high traffic, it shouldn't be any more dense than what that is. There's 2 schools within a block or 2 of this intersection of 124th and 160th. And both in the morning and in the afternoon, whether it be from people getting out of school or traffic from people coming from work, it backs up for miles. And the 124th, if you know it, it goes downhill, very curvy and windy into Woodinville. It's really treacherous. You can't even walk it if you wanted to, because there's absolutely no way to be able to expand it. And right now, as I said, it's a couple mile backup for several hours every day. I believe that there's a duty of the council to protect the neighborhood in which the neighborhoods that have been developed. And I believe there was documentation that stated that Bothell has already exceeded its development, I believe, by approximately 4,500 people so far already. And there really isn't a need for any additional development at this point. I believe that the proposed development, it does, in fact, the only people that it benefits are the people that are the property owners. I think that it would negatively affect, as stated before, it would negatively affect the people in the community that actually built and bought in that area, because they wanted it to be a nice community for their families.
Great,
And
thank you. If you could just take 10 seconds and wrap up.
And so I just think that, the people that want to do this development, they want to take property that now has 3 houses on it, and they want to multiply it by at least 8 times. I don't think it would be in the best interest for the area. There's already a lot of heavy traffic, and I would appreciate the consideration of the council. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Enjoy your evening. Ms. Gwynn?
Good evening. Sandy Gwynn speaking regarding the Regional Fire Authority, or formation of a fire district. The City Council met in February 11th, 2014 to talk about a contract to conduct a consolidation feasibility study. The next meeting was April 14th, 2015, May 5th, 2015, and May 12th, 2015, study session. It's standard practice that during study sessions, the public are not given an opportunity to speak before you as they would during a public hearing. I have 2 issues with this. On May 19th, the City Council publicly voted to go forward with the RFA. Same information, but I've added May 7th RFA Planning Committee. The chair of the RFA Planning Committee asked the one Bothell representative at the RFA Planning Committee, is the city manager a little more open to some of this now? It seems like before he was really just kind of cut and dry. Councilmember Tom Agnew's response was, the city manager was informed that we had 4 votes on the dais, and at that point in time, he became more involved. You've had this room packed with people because of the public process. I go back to those above dates. May 19th is when the council publicly voted. Yet the city manager, according to Councilmember Agnew, and my question to him, if he would have been here tonight, is how did you know there were 4 votes? Who told you? That's completely missing the public process. Is it a serial meeting? Or is it some other citizens, employees, going up to the city manager after quizzing council members? Whatever it is, it's wrong. And for the listening public, Regional Fire Authority will mean a new tax of $1.50 per thousand. It's not only for your house, it's for a business. Businesses with a benefit charge of 50 cents will be mailed to you, and the businesses will have a larger square footage, will have a higher cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn. Appreciate it. Councilmember Sandberg.
So can you leave that up, Sandy? Because that's pretty concerning. The city manager was informed that we had 4 votes on the dais.
And
So
this is, I got a copy of the CD. I did not attend the May 7th RFA meeting, but if you would, you can obtain a copy.
well, I think first of all, I'd like staff to provide us the audio copy of this May 7th meeting, if we can have that put in our boxes. And I think maybe the city manager would like to weigh in. I mean, why did you think you had 4 votes?
This wasn't a comment that I made, so I really don't have any information to provide. This is the first I've seen of it this evening. And I was not at the May 7th meeting, so I'm not sure what input I could provide to you, Councilmember Sandberg.
Well, clearly one of our council members felt that you had 4 votes. So I think this is something that we need to seriously investigate, because this could be evidence of some kind of serial meeting, or like you said, maybe it's just inadvertent conversations from the public to staff. But you know, I hadn't really noticed that. I hadn't really kept track of all the meetings that we've had, and I didn't really realize that it was study session, and then old business. I think we need to address those concerns as well. So I would hope that we would have a reply and response from the executive office and the city attorney regarding the assertions that Ms. Gwynn has made.
Yeah. Councilmember Evans.
Yes, I just want to correct one thing that Sandy said. The city has not authorized moving forward with an RFA. You may have read that somewhere or misinterpreted information, but I'll tell you what the city has approved. The city has authorized the city manager to discuss with the planning committee the cost of balancing the equity within the funding formula, which I think you're familiar with. Each agency is bringing so many resources to the table to start out a new FRA. We were low. We knew we had to potentially bring some more at some point. So that's the negotiations we're in right now. There's been no vote taken on this council to move forward with the RFA. A vote was taken to authorize the city manager to begin negotiations. Before this ever goes to the public, there will be a vote of the council up here whether or not to authorize the issue to go on the ballot or not authorize. So until that vote is taken, the city has made no decision to move forward with an RFA. We certainly
They-
have spent a lot of time studying it.
They voted to continue the participation in the RFA.
Well, that's great. The RFA discussion, yes. That's
I mean,
a
the
little
motion was made a couple of times.
That's a little clearer than what you said before, that the city was authorized to move forward with the RFA. That's not what we authorized. So, anyway, semantics, but whatever you want to say, I just want to clarify, the city has not decided to move forward with
Yeah.
an RFA.
And I guess
We've decided to move forward with discussions.
I have a question to you with regards to the discussion. The original motion was that the negotiations of the 1.5 million be negotiated in executive session. Is that going to happen, or is it going to be a public process? And that's 1.5 million for 5 years. And then I believe I heard the motion 750,000 to 1.5 million. And my question on the 750,000, was that lowered, would that be lowered because we have some extra staff in the fire department admin that could be applied towards that while Bothell residents would still be paying for
Sandy,
the employees?
That is a discussion. There have been no decisions made on any of those things that you just mentioned. It's merely a discussion right now.
Is it going to be in an executive session, or is it going to be public?
I don't know that. I don't
I
know.
hope it's made
Well,
public.
We certainly can keep the public informed on it. There's no doubt about that. So I just wanted to make sure that you and the public as a whole understood that, because
Yeah, I understand it.
We're still a long ways from this going to the vote of the public, us approving whether or not to go to a vote or not approving to go to a vote. So there's a lot of ways to go yet here.
And as you are aware, I have from day one been struggling and coming constantly before this council for an open public process of the RFA. I remind you that there was an executive session held where I was, and other people were removed, and you could not hold an executive session. So I just, not to mention that the 2 night meetings went to 1 night meeting, and the meetings went during the day, and there's like a paragraph of the minutes. So I want to be able to understand the RFA. And it's really hard if it goes into executive sessions, the meetings are during the day and not at night. Thank you.
Can I
Great.
just
I'm
wanted to...
going to comment before you do.
Okay.
So on the bottom of that sheet, you talked about the city manager knowing about 4. He stated that wasn't the case. He didn't make the statement. Tom Agnew made the statement, maybe, and we'll listen to the tape
Yes.
if he did. Coming to that meeting, the last meeting, I think, when we made the vote, I couldn't tell you that there were 4 people supporting it. I wouldn't know that. But ultimately, nobody would know that coming in. I think everybody here on council is extremely sensitive to ongoing meetings. Most of us were introduced to this council with that have been a finding about 10 years ago by the city or the state auditor that came in that there was a violation of the OPMA. So I was introduced to that sensitivity as several council
And I was
members were
not,
as well.
I was on council, but not part of it.
And you were on council and not part of it. So I would have to say in defense of everybody, I wouldn't say that serial meetings were going on. And coming to that meeting, a meeting or 2 ago, I was even questioning whether we would be moving forward at that point. I didn't sense the support with comments that I was hearing up here. So Councilmember Agnew would have to come and speak for himself.
I
with that
also
statement
had
that he made.
previously requested a CD be provided to you from the RFA. It was from the consultant when he presented the draft to the RFA Planning Committee. And in it, he gave a qualified yes for the RFA. So I would really hope that you would also get a copy of that CD.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Sandy. Next time, you have a comment?
Well, there's been a lot of conversation about what action we actually took 2 weeks ago about, are we continuing, are we authorizing, are we not? And the action we took was to authorize Bothell's continued participation in the RFA partnership as the agencies proceed with negotiating and ultimately developing an implementation plan for voter consideration. And at that meeting, we talked about that after the implementation phase was complete, that information would come back to council, and then we would make a decision on whether to place that issue before the voters on a ballot. However, we are continuing our participation to the implementation phase as of today, or as of 2 weeks ago.
I don't see any disagreement with what Councilmember Evans said with what you just repeated, and my understanding as well. Great. So next on the sign-up sheet, Janet DeGrave. Welcome.
So if I have handouts, who do I give them to?
To the clerk right here. And we'll start your time now. Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, thank you for being here. I've lived in Buffalo for 32 years, and I would like to propose a park for the second time. So I'm just passing out information on the proposal.
Thank you for the very cool paper clips.
No problemo.
They're pretty wild. Would you like to explain what you've presented to us?
Well, in 1992, I lived directly behind FEMA, and they were thinking, because people were dumping yard waste on their property, they let the neighborhood know that they would be moving the fence line. And when I purchased the property, the realtor said that that property was a green belt. Well, I found out after having purchased the property, it's not a green belt. It's owned by the federal government, and they can pretty much do whatever they want. So I went over there, and I said, well, what if I maintain the property myself personally? So I had a neighborhood meeting, and I've been mowing the green belt back there since 1992. And in 92, we also had the Growth Management Act. So I came to all the meetings for that. That was a lot of fun, good times. And then I thought, well, since I was saving that small little tiny piece from being not used by anyone, I would expand my vision a little bit. So I went to the city, and I went to the state, and I went to the county, and I went to the United States and asked, would you mind terribly much at this time, 1992, setting aside this land for parks? And I named it Shelton View Park. So I got letters back from the city, and I got letters back from the state, and I got letters back from the county, and I got letters back from the United States of America. And I also talked to a few of the trusts. And at that time, no one said, Janet, we see your love of trees. We're right behind you. We want to help you out. And we'll go ahead and purchase that property and save it for someone's grandchildren.
Thank you. If you could just wrap it up with another.
That's pretty much it.
Okay, great. You have a
Thank you.
question, Councilmember Sandberg?
Maybe Laura can help you put your map up on the viewer, the document viewer. Do you have an extra copy of your own stuff?
I have a copy of my own stuff.
You have some
Not technology
blue lines
inclined.
and some green lines, and
Yeah.
I was curious what the significance of the blue line is.
The blue line is where the city of Bothell, that's the city of Bothell limit.
So that's the city of, okay, that's our boundary line, okay.
Our boundary line.
And then where is the fire station up there?
Fire station is right? We see where you see Fourth right there. It's actually on that little tiny point right there.
Okay. And then maybe staff can answer this, because I don't know if the DNR land is available for sale, and I don't know when the last time we have.
I actually spoke with DNR today.
Oh, okay. What did
Did
DNR
you want to
say?
know what they said?
I do.
Well, they told me that if the city of Bothell had the finances to buy the land, they would be willing to listen.
Did they say how much?
He told me, Rod Renning, who I actually spoke to in 1992, he told me that he could not tell me actually the amount. But I also talked to Larry Karen today, who works for Ed Fruitling Incorporated, and he told me that the 25.69 acres has actually grown a little bit since 1992 to 26 acres, according to the city of Bothell, and he was willing to let his property go for $14 million.
$14 million? Okay.
I think that's on your sheet that I gave you.
Okay.
Property is for sale, $14 million. Small, I think you mentioned small bills or something
Councilmember
like
Sandberg,
that.
do you have more questions?
No, I don't.
Okay. Anybody else? Ma'am, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time. I don't have any further sign-up sheets, but I saw a couple yellow pieces in people's hand. Ma'am, in the back, if you would bring that forward, hand it to clerk, and then we can start your time.
Yeah, my name is Jie Zhang. It's nice to see everybody here in 2 weeks. Same topic with Elizabeth, my neighbor, regarding the property development, 124th and 160th. I really against the new develop plan because will affect our daily life, will decrease our property value, plus will cause a lots of flooding problem. And last time I mentioned, I have a dog family home there. If the development plan approved, all my residents, they stay home 24/7. They have to hear the noise every day. I do feel sorry for them. And hopefully it's not happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next on the sign-up sheet is Sandy Alto.
Thank you for listening to me today. It's always nice to be back to see the council. I'm here because I have passed the shock and anger stage of the Wayne Land preservation, and I want to thank you, Mayor Freed, from the bottom of my heart. I said I wouldn't cry, would I? For taking the first step back towards the entire community. That said, I want to urge the council, staff, One Bothell and Frontera to continue to do everything you can to preserve this land for the history that we will create and the legacy we believe Bothell. You would never know I'm from New York. And tough as nails. Actually, now that I've composed myself, and since I have 3 minutes, my husband's a songwriter, and he wrote a song the other day, and it's just kind of stuck in my head, and unfortunately I changed all the words, and I thought I would just give you 30 seconds of it right now, if I could stop crying, and I hope I don't look like a vampire. But it goes like this. We're saving Wayne, one day at a time. We're saving Wayne, Wayne. One day it will be fine. We're putting pennies in a jar. They'll add up to be much more. And we'll use them for what we've saved them for. We're saving Wayne.
Thanks, Sandy. I don't have any further sheets. Oh, it looks like we have several, so.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Council.
sir. If you introduce yourself for the record, that'd be
Todd
great.
Crooks. That was a tough act to follow, but I'll try here. I spoke at your last meeting about the Veterans Museum, and you directed me to have a meeting with John Keats from Parks and Rec, which I did, to just kind of brainstorm, look for options. We talked about several in the last meeting, and I want to kind of put John on the spot here. I know he had a meeting last Friday with the Business Park Association. I was just wondering, were they favorable, or did they turn it down, the idea of the museum being there, or what was the general feel from your meeting? More work to do, okay. So I guess it's still an option, not completely killed. I'll take that as. Also, I kind of wanted to bring up the Centennial Park that's up north, kind of near where I live. It has the old school there, which, to my knowledge, it's still empty and unfinished. So Mr. Keats mentioned that is going to be I believe, a public meeting room is what it's scheduled for. And I was just wondering what the process is of maybe changing that plan to turn it into a museum. I know that park cannot have the high-use activity like sports fields and things like that. So I don't think a museum would be a high-use activity, except on maybe Veterans Day and Memorial Day. So I was wondering if there was any option there to look at that a little more closely. Any comment, or who should I speak to about that possibility? Anybody?
Do you have any thoughts?
I would suggest going through the Parks Board first, since they would be the ones that come back to council for a recommendation.
Okay, so just talk to John a little bit more in depth about that idea. We mentioned it that day, and
Right. I would meet with the full Parks Board, though, not just the director.
Oh, I see. Okay. And also, I saw the Dawson building, which I understand you're selling that to raise revenue for the rest of the projects, but that sure looks like a neat museum building, but I don't know what the chances are of changing the plan on that, but I'm not going to be bashful here about coming up with ideas. Many people have paid the price for this museum, so it's still there. It's still standing. It hasn't been knocked down yet, so I'm leaving that on my list. Maybe it's not on your list, but and I'd like some time to have a meeting with maybe Mr. Evans and Mr. Agnew, who are kind of the veterans who kind of spoke up last time. If you gentlemen would mind meeting with me after work some night, or at your favorite bar or coffee shop or whatever.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that if Tom and I can talk, and we can get back in touch with you if set something up.
I'm just trying to get some momentum going and keep it going, sir. And I've been kind of busy this last week, but I want to start pursuing things a little more. And also, I was wondering if somehow talking to King and Snohomish County and kind of getting them in the dialogue. I mean, I can send letters to them, but they ignore my letters real well. So I was wondering if you had an idea there.
Great, thank you. You do have a question, Councilmember Sandberg?
Well, thank you, Mr. Crooks, for continuing to brainstorm ideas. I think these are all really valid opportunities. I hadn't thought about the schoolhouse up at Centennial Park. Maybe staff can facilitate some conversation with not just the Parks and Recreation Board, but the Landmark Preservation Board. Maybe facilitate some conversation with, there's a Snohomish County Historic Preservation Grant Program. There's For Culture in King County. I think, so I just want to applaud your efforts to keep pushing, and we'll keep this in the forefront, so we keep thinking of solutions and find a location for your museum.
Mr. Crooks? Also, I don't know how broad of an area you're looking at, but I know my daughter, who currently lives in the Port Orchard area, there's a similar type museum as to what you've been had in place. She suggested I go there. I haven't been back I haven't been there to see it yet, but
Right downtown?
I believe it is in kind of downtown Port
Yes,
Orchard.
we've been there. It's a one-man effort. He owns the building, runs the museum.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was something where that was a consideration being outside the area too, maybe that in there, or
Yeah, I mean, me personally and most of the people that have been involved are just kind of shooting for the King County, Snohomish County area. There's
Okay.
a large population here that does not have such a museum. So, that's kind of
like I
my
say,
thing.
I know of it, and I just thought I'd put it out there for you.
It's a neat place.
Okay, great, thank you. Next up, we have Thomas Massey. We have your address. Just please state your name at the dais for the record.
Okay, yes. My name's Thomas Massey. I live in a small community called Crystal Springs Estates on 9th Avenue, directly across the street from Crystal Springs Elementary. I emailed the council, Public Works Director, about a month ago, and I appreciate everybody's quick response about that. The email was regarding safety concerns with the crosswalk leading from one side of the street into the elementary. I should say the inefficient crosswalk. We've had a number of very close calls in our community with kids crossing the crosswalk. With the increase of development in the area, 9th Avenue has become a alternate route for Bothell Everett Highway with the speed limit of 35, which is widely ignored, especially during the heavy commuter hours in the morning and in the afternoon, which coincide with the times that school is letting in and getting out. It's an old school. Parking is also inefficient, so it's very crowded in these areas. And having such high traffic that ignores the traffic laws and a crosswalk that is barely visible upon approach is a disaster waiting to happen. We've started a petition, and we've had many folks that have signed this petition. I'd like to read one comment in particular from a Michelle Waite. She says, "I've done crossing duty and have seen firsthand how dangerous the area can be. I run an after-school program which lets out at 5:15. By the time I am leaving at 5:30, I feel like I'm playing Frogger just trying to get to my car. We are a school. There are always after-school activities happening. It's a residential neighborhood with the junior high and senior high kids walking to and from bus stops. The kid present hours are not just 9 to 3:30. Please help make this street safe for our kids of all ages." So present that here today. We have other members of our community here today. I understand that these things take time and money, but I would ask the council to act fast before a preventable accident does occur. There's a number of things that can be done immediately, including lowering the speed limit from 35 to a more appropriate 25 with the residential zone that we are in. I don't think that's asking too much, especially considering we're a small side street, and 228th has a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, and ours is 35. So those are a couple of my comments. I think if the council allow, one of our neighbors would like to say something as well.
Yeah, my name is Heather Miller, and I'm next door to Tommy. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate the same things. I have a first grader. I walk her to school every day, and it's absolutely crazy. Even with our school zone of 20 miles per hour, I rarely see people driving that slowly. There have been several close calls, even with my girls. We do participate in an activity after school on Tuesdays, and there's no crossing guard at that time. And we've had close calls just waiting for cars to stop, and one car will stop, the other cars behind them are not paying attention. It really needs to be made a clearer crosswalk. We need lights. Speed bumps would be great. Something to indicate that there is a school, and we need a safe crossing zone. And like Tommy said, during earlier in the morning. There's no crossing guard or anything for junior high or high school kids that actually have to walk quite a ways to get to their bus stops. So it is a big concern.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Richard Tran. I live with in the same neighborhood as Tom and Megan, and I have 3 little kids. And oftentimes I'm very scared to walk them across the street to play at the school play yard because it's just too dangerous to walk across. So I do hope that something would happen, some safety measure would happen to that area soon. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Any questions? Councilmember Sandberg.
So I thought I saw in the email thread regarding this neighborhood's concern, we're going to be repaving 9th Avenue from, well, maybe you can describe that pavement project. And then I thought as a part of that there was discussion about incorporating crosswalks or at least addressing some of their concerns about the safety.
We are doing pavement overlay on 9th in the area this summer, and I'm trying to remember, it was, I think, a few weeks ago that we had our exchange. And we will do what we can within that overlay project to improve the situation. But that does not include flashing crosswalks and that sort of thing. We did, at the last city council meeting, at the request of council, after the petition from Frank Love parents, we are working on what our return to council to discuss school zone safety in a more general fashion, because we have several schools throughout the city and concerns from parents for all of them.
And so is the intent to bring back, now that we're hearing these concerns, also school crosswalk safety for Crystal Springs Elementary, and then hopefully having a response from the North Shore School District on what their solutions are or what they can bring to the table?
Council's request was all school zones.
All school zones.
So that's what we're looking at. Yeah.
And then what would be the process for decreasing the speed limit for that corridor?
Public Works would have to work with police and then develop a recommendation for the city council.
And you would need direction from council, I would guess, to come back with that?
Yes.
Because that's something that I would be in support of. And maybe a broader look at all of the school impacted areas. And then I would imagine police has heard the need for increased presence in other areas of the city and in this area as well.
Great. Okay, Councilmember Ram.
I think with the Frank Love conversation also came some additional police patrol, so I'm hoping, I know you don't have a microphone over there, but I'm really hoping that we can, during the in and out of kids coming to and from school, that we can have some police out there this year, like right now, before the break, the summer break. Everything else we're talking about is going to happen for next year. So.
Right. And we have seen, since this issue was brought up a little over a month ago, we have seen a slight increase in police presence, mainly in the mornings. So that is much appreciated. But one of our main concerns is also off-school hours. There's a park along 9th Avenue as well as the school. Many kids, my kids are in junior high, and they frequent the school, to go play basketball or use some of the other, off hours. And the junior high and high school kids that are walking in the morning before school starts, most of the year, which is it's still dark outside at 7 o'clock when they're walking to their bus stops. So, the idea of putting a raised crosswalk or some flashing lights that would alert drivers that there are pedestrians crossing is much needed. So I appreciate the council's consideration.
Can I make one more?
Sure.
I was also thinking in the city of Woodinville, like Woodinville Town Center and city of Kirkland, they even have orange flags that pedestrians can use. They're held on like a post on each side of the crosswalk. Even if there's something temporary that we can do until, more lighting is able to be put in, I think that would be beneficial, especially with kids in summer coming up. It's not a permanent solution, but it would be helpful to alert cars and traffic when there is not a crossing guard present. So
Great.
thank you.
So much. Appreciate it. So I have come to the end of the sign-ups. Do we have more sheets? Mr. Sears and ma'am, if you come. You first, ma'am, of course. That's Sears. It's a compliment. Yeah. Ma'am, if you state your name for the record.
My name is Marcia Stedman. You may have called my name already because I was here earlier to sign up, but I didn't come back until after you already started your comment session. I'm here to talk about getting around in the new Bothell. Since the new buildings are being constructed and the new streets have been aligned, I find that my normal route for commuting around the city, through the city, because I live on West Hill and I go east a lot, and south. So I need to allow much more extra time for when I'm with the new stoplights that are everywhere. But there's also everybody else is traveling at the same, more people are traveling at the peak hours too. So I guess I want to ask, what are your plans for making it easier for people to get around in our brand new city? I would like to see local bus service come back. I know that's not in your realm of endeavor. It's really with bus company, Metro or community transit, and or more parking at the park and rides. Or how about having a public, and what kind of consideration has been made for this new, there's going to be a new community transit line coming down from Everett, down 527. How can it get to Central Bothell? How is it going to access this new town center that we're going to have soon? It's our new town center, and I really would like to see something done about getting people around and through it. Maybe the intent is to make this whole area a pedestrian zone. In that case, for a pedestrian zone, we have to have some place for people to park and people to get there. So I just would like to make sure that this is addressed in the comprehensive plan.
I really appreciate your comments, and I'll answer a few of them, and imagine others will jump on as well. Through the downtown plan, we've obviously had a lot of plans for our expanding of roads. So with all the tolling that is going on 522, several of us have gone down to Olympia, and I used to serve on the East Side Transportation Partnership Board, and we'd always lobby to the point that WashDOT would get so frustrated they would say, we already know what Bothell wants. And so we were successful getting $50 million for the rerouting of 520 through downtown. So widening that road, allowing new bus lanes and new wide sidewalks is a huge improvement. We improved Wayne Golf Course curve there. That's now improved. That is connected into those improvements that go through Kenmore. And then as you've gone up to, I'm blanking when I'm sitting right by Safeway all the way up to Canyon Park, you've seen that road widened with now bike lanes and sidewalks on that as well. So continued improvements on that. And then 200's has sidewalks as well. So continue to make these small improvements. As far as parking in downtown, we're adding 250 parking spots with the new city hall that's going in. So that will be open around October 15th or so. So those are huge new parking facility that would have to take some congestion off the streets when you're coming downtown to spending time with your friends and family. Sound Transit, I got a call from Dow Constantine about 2 months ago. They're going to give Bothell about $5 million for a new parking structure that will connect into the Sound Transit lines. Where city manager and council are working on that. Light rail. We won't see light rail for a really long time, so the even conversation about it is difficult. But one of our state representatives, Moscoso, is very passionate about how we can connect light rail in from Bellevue up to Bothell through the BNR connection up to the campus. And he thinks that's something that he can see through to fruition, so we encourage him to do so. So there's also been an idea by our deputy mayor about a trolley in downtown that connect the campus with our East Riverside Drive with a senior family housing overlay to connect pedestrians and be able to hop on, hop off, and connect Kenyon Park into our city. So a few different ideas have been going around, but certainly something on all of our lines. So don't know if others want to jump in. Deputy Mayor?
Great, thank you. Yes, I know I've chatted with people about Bothell possibly having a little trolley system, and appreciate your comments. Most of those items that you list are other agencies, the Park and Ride, expanding those parking lots. That's either Sound Transit or King County Metro, and we would be supportive of that, and we try to get them to do that because it is a problem. And as the mayor said, we're incrementally in small little steps making the improvements we can. The travel around town, people often are associating, houses or business to the increase in traffic, and really most of our traffic is people cutting through our town to go someplace else. It's not the people that live here or working here, it's people cutting through. And if you just take a moment and look at that, you'll notice that it's not Bothell residents that are causing our traffic jams, it's people going through Bothell to other places to avoid the backup on 405 or the future tolling on 405 or the tolling on 522. So it's unfortunate that because of the number of state highways and state routes that we have in town, we're this crossroads that people use us to cut through, and it is hampering our quality of life. As the mayor said, we're doing what we can incrementally and through smaller projects. In the big scheme of things, they're smaller projects, but we're also trying to do our part by lobbying Olympia to get monies and make improvements in other areas to help ease the congestion in the downtown.
Well, I appreciate all your comments. Are there more questions?
Thank you so
I
much.
just
for
wanted
coming
to
out
say
this
that
evening.
we have a great location. I mean, we're like this transit hub where everything comes in. So I hope that we can make something really good out of it.
Absolutely.
All the dust has settled.
We agree.
I would just say that this is part of the reason why I asked for presentations from Sound Transit and Metro, to have them come and share what their future plans for expansion are and how we and our citizens can be at the table and ensure that some of our needs are met by
Yeah,
those agencies.
Absolutely. Mr. James McNeil. You guys are like attached to the hip. You're always together.
Okay, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Short and sweet. Got to have a little fun every now and then. It's been a long 5 months, and I want to commend everyone, the community. On behalf of One Bothell, we want to thank everyone for everything they're doing. And I want everyone to hear that the power of the community, when they stand together and they know something is going on or they want to change the way something is done, they can do it when they stand together. And I think we've found out that right now. And all eyes are on us right now to do some very positive things throughout our community. There's a lot of issues here, not just the purchase of Wayne Golf Course and saving it in perpetuity. There's traffic, transportation, all kinds of other issues. But we can see now what we can do together if we stand together as one Bothell, and work together to fight through these issues. So I want to thank all of you individually for everything you've done. Mayor, thank you. I commend you for stepping up and working with us. And we look forward to the city continuing to work with us and Forterra to get the land acquired.
Great.
So thank you all very much.
Thank you, James. Have a good night. Any other sign-ups this evening? Speakers? Sure.
James Barnhart. Mayor, I'd like to thank you also for deciding to sell, and your LLC to sell the back nine. Although I have a different take on the situation, sometimes I see it as patting yourself on the back too much. I see it as saving your reputation. I know that you probably have further aspirations of higher office after you leave Bothell because of your involvement with the Republican Party. But I do thank you for deciding to do that. I would like to refresh some people's memories, and I do agree with James in keeping positive. But there's a line you have to draw in keeping positive. You have to remember the past also, because when you forget history, you tend to repeat it. And I still believe that we have some problems in this city. I love the article from May 17th in the Seattle Times about Mayor Freed. Quote, Freed is more interested in looking forward than back. That's kind of scary to me, because where's the preservation in his mind? When I found out he tore down that beautiful 1928 farmhouse, I was totally flabbergasted, as were other people. And then when he said it was an unfortunate misunderstanding, really? Wow. And surprised at the anger of the people, really? Wow. Give me a break. Then I go on to Mark Lamb being reelected this fall and how he's going to take the brunt of everything. Well, there might be some positives in that, but someday Mr. Freed will be reelected also. Then I would also agree with what Sandy Gwynn had to say when she got up here, wholeheartedly. I've had something on my mind for a long time since Mark Lamb, when he was mayor, committed adultery. In the Bothell Reporter, one of the articles, when that came out, said that there was a city councilman with Mark Lamb at Masala Restaurant, and they never released the name of that city council person. The reason I ask is because I feel it goes to this person's credibility and your authenticity of who you portray yourself to be. So at this time, I would ask publicly, Mr. Freed, Mayor Freed, were you that city council person?
So I'll first speak to your comments. I think it's extremely unfortunate that you, who claim to be a person of faith, take it as an opportunity to come in public and point out somebody else's sin. That's extremely unfortunate and against biblical standards which you claim to hold to. And no, I was not that person.
Thank you. But I wasn't bringing Christianity into this or your walk
You
with
do
the Lord, which
every
I
time.
could very easily. So then to
Your
my...
time is up. Thank you.
I'll be back.
There are other people who wish to speak this evening? Ma'am, if you... Oh, I think you already spoke. Oh, you're showing. I thought you were raising your hand and request. Are there others who wish to speak this evening? No. So we have reached the end of our public speaking time. I'm actually going to take the opportunity at this point to take our break until 8 o'clock, so council will be in recess. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to jump into AB 15071, which is a continued public hearing to consider a Planning Commission recommendation, the 2015 Periodic Plan and Code update. Our public hearing is open, and we do have a staff presentation for Mr. Hassler.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. This is the continued public hearing. I don't have a formal presentation for you tonight. Partly because I thought we could better use the time actually talking about the plan than hearing from me. In your packet this week, what we've provided you is an issues matrix where we tried to capture all of the issues that have been raised either by council or members of the public to date. And we've given you a brief description of each of those issues, as well as the Planning Commission recommendation that's before you, and then staff comments for each issue. The issues are organized by planning area-wide element and then by sub-area plan, just as the plan itself is. And we've numbered the issues so that you can refer to them simply by number, and hopefully that'll make it easier. What we're hoping the council will do tonight is a couple things. We'd like you to use that issues matrix that we've given you to focus on the issues that are most important to you and hopefully get direction from you on some of those issues. The second thing we need you to do tonight at the end of the public hearing is to make a motion to continue this to June 9th. We haven't advertised that date, so we do need you to continue that to a date certain.
Great, thank you.
With us tonight, we have Arthur Sullivan from Arch. I wanted to point that out because I know one of the issues that several council members had raised was the issue of affordable housing, and Arthur is here as a resource tonight, and we'd be glad to address that issue for you.
Perfect.
With that, I'd like to turn it back to you, Mayor, and move forward if we could.
Great, thank you, Gary. So we do have several people on the sign-up sheet. The first is Ms. Stedman. Okay, so that's okay.
Mayor, I believe you received several testimony from several persons tonight on the plan already during the non-agenda public comments. So
Yeah, we also had Elizabeth Iceland. We heard her, and I think I got it right this time. Iceland, hi. Steve Nelson. Mr. Nelson, would you like to speak? Great.
My name is Steve Nielsen. I'm one of 4 property owners of the parcel of land at the corner of Northeast 160th and 124th Avenue Northeast. And I'd like to make some comments that come out of the meetings we had at the Planning Commission. I'll read this and then I won't ramble. The recommendation made by the Bothell Planning Commission for zoning reclassification of the subject properties is in direct conflict with the city annexation zoning policy communicated to property owners during the annexation process. The Planning Commission has forwarded to the City Council their recommendation to apply the R5400A zoning classification as a substitute for the King County R8 pre-annexation zoning on the affected properties. The appropriate City of Bothell zoning classification that meets the standard of the annexation policy is the R4000 category. It is clearly understood by the owners of this recently annexed property that, and I quote the policy, the city's approach to land use planning and zoning is to apply the Bothell Comprehensive Plan designations and zoning classifications which most closely match the existing Snohomish County, or in this case, King County plans and zones. The base density of the King County R8 zone is 8 dwelling units per acre. The manner in which the King County residential densities are calculated is shown in the following section of the King County zoning code. And the sections are, they're very brief. Section 21A12080 says, subparagraph A, all site areas may be used in the calculation of base and maximum allowed density, residential density, or project floor area. The second King County code is section 21A12070, D. If calculations result in a fraction, the fraction shall be rounded to the nearest whole number. These 2 brief sections are fundamental in the description of the densities allowed in the R8 zone, which is the zone that we've had for years, and should be taken into account when the planned density of the City of Bothell zone match is recommended. General Bothell zoning provisions require that land area and roads and other rights-of-way, surface water retention, detention, water quality facilities, critical areas, critical area buffers, or land dedicated to the city shall not be counted in the calculation of the number of units when determining the net density of the subdivision. These reductions in the site area of a development parcel have a direct impact in the comparison of the King County R8 and Bothell 5400 zoning classifications. There are no reductions of site area. Is that my 5 minutes?
That is your time. That's your 3 minutes. Correct.
Oh, I thought I had 5 minutes. I timed this for a 5-minute presentation.
Yeah, we, as all the speakers this evening, it's 3 minutes per protocol manual.
Well, just in closing.
You take 30 seconds, to wrap up.
Thank you. The equitable application of the City of Bothell annexation zoning policy established by this council results in an R4000 zoning on the subject properties. They are extremely closely matched, is what the policy calls for. So we We object to the recommendation of the Planning Commission and ask you to consider the application of your stated public policy to this.
What did the Planning Commission say in response to this similar letter that you may have presented?
I'm sorry?
What did the Planning Commission say to this argument to you?
Oh, this is the first time it's been presented.
Oh, it is the first time you presented it.
Yeah, we tried to, we advocated R4000 all through the planning. I think maybe there were 2 hearings at the Planning Commission. And actually, there was discussion on the panel, on the commission, that seemed to be in favor of it. And then when the gavel hit, it was unanimous at 5400A. Oh, no, 5400D. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Next on the sign-up sheet is Mr. Roger Belanich. Mr. Belanich, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, and I don't know many of you anymore. Lamb and
I'm not an old-timer.
Yeah, from the Planning Commission days, I remember you. So I've been around for quite a while here, developing Canyon Park Shopping Center, starting off in '87 and doing the business park and the extension of it and other things like that. So probably the better question for myself is, what am I doing here? Still, but I still have the pride in what's going on at Canyon Park Business Center, and I'm on the board of the Owners Association. And from a personal standpoint, and we've only broadly touched this at the Owners Association meetings, which are only once a year, although we have special ones, that I'm in support of mixed use here. And I never thought I would say that. 30 years ago, if anybody said when I was going through the comp plan amendment, you ought to think mixed use, I'd say you're crazy. And I'm not. But now it's appropriate. And I think there's a few good reasons for it, besides the land use and the issues of growth management, is that maybe, and I only can say this maybe because we haven't evaluated the difference between residential at peak hour and more business park. And there is a vacant land there, somewhat inhibited by the wetlands of the teacher's property, and I've been investigating that with the staff recently. But I think that's a plus. And one part that I want to call your attention to is 20th Street. 20th Street is the frontage of the school district's property, the bus depot. And it borders my property, Red Robin. I own that property in there. That property is being evaluated by, or that road extension is being evaluated by us for to see the feasibility of it. And it's a bit tricky, but we're evaluating what it would do for traffic. I know from the past, like maybe more than 10 years ago, it would eliminate 15% of the trips at Maltby intersection because it would go straight through. And if you watch up there at peak hour, as I was noticing tonight, people are going through my shopping center. They're going everywhere. It's like water trying to find its way downhill. So that's about the only avenue we've got to increase some additional capacity for traffic. And it came up at the board meeting 2 months ago, and that's why we initiated a traffic study. So I think that should be part and parcel of your comp plan amendment. It was at one time, and I don't know, maybe Bruce or somebody knows, that it was in the 6-year plan. And I think we're going to have to form a benefit district to do this within the park, because the roads are private within the park. But that's one thing I want to strongly have you of an awareness of, because I think it's important. I think, by the way, since we're there, Maltby Road and that choke point, I was the private sector person in the Transportation Improvement Board for 7 years or so. And that is, as you know, Eastside Transportation. I was one of the early people there, and Skid, of course, going way back.
Great.
I like the Eastside people better.
Yeah.
In any event, I think Maltby Road, my God, I've talked to Eddie Lau from time to time about that. It's something for you to consider. It's part of what the problems are for everybody in the community, is how to address traffic.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Would you entertain a question?
Sorry?
Would you entertain a question? Would you take a question?
Of course. I wanted to walk away from my 3 minutes.
No, we won't let you leave yet.
Okay.
So one of the recommendations before us is to add activity center zoning to the Canyon Park sub-area, which would provide for residential zoning that doesn't exist there now. and at the activity center development, 65 feet building height. We could see, if you use, for example, the Six Oaks development as an example, we could see potentially 100 units per acre developed there. And so I had proposed and others had proposed that this might be an opportunity to add an affordable housing component to when we add residential to the area, and other things like adding other amenities like parks, providing for park space when we see this addition of land intensity. And so I was wondering how you felt about that, how you felt about the provision of affordable housing, and not just the Canyon Park RAC, because we've had a conversation about not just placing it in one area, but maybe citywide, but since you can speak from your perspective. And then also, how do you see providing park space through these comprehensive plan language changes?
It's a little bit ahead of me to talk about affordable housing within the context of the business park. I'm afraid I just can't respond to that at this time. In the process of it being brought about, if it was a going deal, then the business park would have to deal with it, or would deal with it. And that brings up a point that I hadn't brought up yet. The CC&Rs, the covenants of the business park, do not allow residential. But I think that's still achievable. I think there's some recognition that the mix of residential within this business park is good for employees to be near the job. That's not a settled issue. It hasn't been really discussed very much. But I think at the point where this comp plan goes through, then it can be discussed. And I'm optimistic that that would come about for reasons of peak hour traffic and employment center and that thing. But I can't get down to those exact things. But I'm on the board of the association, and I would advocate for it myself. And I've even investigated a bit of that with the staff, very helpful on the teacher's vacant property, but that's kind of a complex matter, and we couldn't go any further on it right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Mr.
Nice
Bolanek.
to see you all again.
Next on the sign-up sheet is Patrick Ewing.
Hello, Patrick Ewing. I've got 4 items, so I'll try to move through them quickly. The first item you've heard before is please do not change the existing language in the comp plan and development regulations regarding neighborhood cut-through traffic. These provisions were a mandate from the community as a result of the failed street plan over a decade ago. Second item is accessory dwelling units. I'm very concerned that the amount of changes in these provisions will change the character of single-family neighborhoods. There's less restrictive language as far as owner occupancy, in parking, size, access doors, and also way too much discretion in this regard is given to the community director, development director, rather than being restrictive in the code. So I'd take the time to work through that and make sure we're protecting the character of single-family neighborhoods and not turning them into multifamily. Fourth is landscape medians. I'll come back to that at the end because I have pictures. The other item is the REC zoning in Canyon Park Business Park. I think that it's being applied to a way too broad area to be really an activity center. It's a huge area in the business park. I would recommend that you try to locate it along the arterials and along the park and where the park and ride to make it a reasonable parking distance so that you can hope to get some people to use transit. So that will reduce the traffic impacts you're going to have there. At a previous meeting, the council acknowledged there was a shortfall of parks within the Snohomish County area of Bothell. I agree. Please don't make the matters worse by applying the RAC but not taking the time to put the infrastructure in that goes along with it. You need to address the traffic. You need to address the parks. So what you could do is to find a way to provide provisions within the plan that if you develop RAC zoning with residential, you need to provide park either park space or provide mitigation fees so that we could collectively purchase or improve the existing park spaces that are out there. We have examples of this taking place in the past. We have precedents in the downtown area. Even though it was adjacent to Park at Bothell Landing, we added additional park space within the downtown plan. With the Beardsley Gateway project, we required that project to basically fund a public access route through the development in return for the RIC zoning, and also a public plaza. So we could easily do the same thing to the Canyon Park business area. Regarding landscape medians, I think they're very unsightly, and I think that the rationale that we need to reduce the maintenance costs is kind of mitigated by the fact that you have less impervious surface area, and then you don't have to provide as much stormwater treatment and such. So I think the maintenance cost is not it's a red herring issue.
Great,
so I
thank
have
you, Patrick.
pictures that I'd like to give to council that show the medians, that gives you an example. It's right here on 527.
Okay. Yeah, you can hand those to the clerk, and we'll pass them down the line. Others who wish to speak tonight?
I had a
Ma'am?
question. I was just, since if there's just one copy, if he could put that copy of the landscape median on the document viewer, and if we could just,
Oh, there's one copy?
so we could
Oh.
just see what the specific concern is.
So this is a landscape median on 527 right in front of the Safeway project, which has landscape in the middle of the arterial, which is what our current comp plan says. Here is a picture of development that's already occurred, a city project. And this is a landscape median that's just to the north of the same project that the city put in. So we put it in that's not even consistent with our existing comp plan. Here's another median right in front of Country Village that's just concrete. And here's a close-up of what the concrete looks like. It's just concrete. I mean, there's some little detail in there to make it look like stone or something.
It's stamped concrete,
it's
yes.
completely pervious. It's not. It's impervious. It doesn't let the water through. So it's
Okay.
ugly and not good for the environment.
Great. How's it not good for the environment, out of curiosity?
By increasing the impervious surface that you would then have to treat the stormwater for.
Okay. Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Phoebe Spatasian, and I'm with Steve Miller. I'm also one of the owners on the property on 124th and 160th. Very, very busy intersections. And I just want to point out that we're not asking the city council to change anything for us or make it less. We're asking just 10 years ago when I bought this property, the zoning was R8, and this is what King County has for R8, and the most similar zoning would be R4000. At this point, the 5,400 zoning is taking away at least 25% of our property. So instead of getting 8 lots like we were at the minimum of 8 lots, which King County even allows 12 in certain situations, we're getting only 6 with 5,400 because of the minimum, and we cannot round up. So the calculations that we made is really only 6 lots instead of 8 lots. It's really, when we're just asking based on the frequently asked questions on your website, to just keep a zoning that King County has had for us for decades now. So when we incorporated into the city, this is a very busy corner. We would like to just have one entrance and be able to, right now we have 4 different entrances off 124th. I think having one street that accesses that property to create a little neighborhood there, we have nothing to do with the properties in the back. They're accessed by a nice street. They go in the back. We have to deal with backing out into the traffic, because each property owner we each back out. So in order for us to be able to develop something, we need the 4,000 zoning to match what King County had. I'm sorry, I'm so emotional about it.
You're fine.
But
You're fine.
I'm not used to speaking in public. So.
Doing just
So
fine.
anyway, that's all I'm asking too. And I have the King County, I've been there a few times. I do have, this is their printout that shows the R8, exactly the minimum and everything. And we did compare it with the 4,000, and it is most closely matched to 4,000. It's actually, the R8 is much more liberal than even 4,000 in King County. So, okay.
Great. Thank you so much. You have one question. Councilmember Evans.
Yes, thank you. I drive by that corner quite often, and those 4 parcels, are those rental properties now, or, because you mentioned cars backing out, and it looks like to me the cars are parking on the front yards, and there's plenty of room to turn around and go out forward. But I guess my biggest question is, what is the current use of that property?
Right now, 1 acre, more than 1 acre only has one property on it, and that's why. But if we were to go to our 5,400, we would not be able to just back out, right?
So is it rental housing now? Is that what's on there?
Well, it's owner occupied, but the 2 of them in the corner are rentals, yes. And there's the vacant lot, which is not developed yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So those 4 properties have 4 different entrances.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there others that wish to address council tonight? No? Okay. So we'll jump into council deliberations and direction to staff. We have scheduled an hour total for this. We're 23 minutes in, so we will need to wrap up by 9. We do have 2 other items this evening that we need to address and get out of here at a decent hour. So, Councilmember Evans.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we extend the public hearing to next Tuesday, what is May 9th? June 9th. We extend the public hearing to June 9th?
Yeah.
Question? So does that mean no more discussion tonight?
No.
Oh, okay. You just want to get it out of the way. Okay, second.
I have a motion. I don't have a second.
Second.
Oh, you second it. Councilmember Sandberg. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? This passes unanimously. We're extending till June 9th. So the floor is back to you, Councilmember Evans, if you like. And dividing the time up equally, we have about 6 minutes per council member.
Well, I'll pass for right now.
Okay.
Member Sanders chomping at the bit down
Okay.
there, so
Trish, do you want to jump in?
Sure.
Great.
So we have Arthur Sullivan here tonight from Arch Regional Coalition for Housing, and we had asked him to speak about housing affordability, and in relation, we've had some conversation in relation to the RAC plan, the proposed RAC zone. So I was hoping that we could hear from you this evening, so you wouldn't have to sit through another meeting and then go home without saying anything.
Arthur, would you like to come forward and take my 6 minutes? 5 minutes. Whatever time you need.
Well, I'm not sure how much time I need. We presented some information for you in the chart, so I think I would just maybe give a grounding, just take a minute to indicate on that item that what we were basically doing is when Councilmember Sandberg raised the question about affordability potentially in some of the areas that you're looking at, some zoning changes as part of the comp plan update, we were reflecting that that is a very common practice of other cities in East King County, to look at that as an opportunity time to ask that question. And so very often a number of other cities who are members of ARCH, their councils have elected to link changes in zoning to some affordability. What we put in was just sort of a placeholder for conversation for you as sort of the main sort of rule we've learned over the years is that, and we've seen some cities who change zoning and then 2 years later asked a question about affordability and found that their hands were kind of tied on doing stuff. And so we sort of said, we know you're going through a planning process in the near future that puts some type of placeholder language, and we gave a couple different ways that could be approached. One is to put a standard out there, which, and sort of err on the high side now, knowing that you can always relax it potentially. And then, or the other approach, which actually one other city used at one point, was sort of put in that language saying, if you develop at this point in time, you must work with the director of planning, this was in Newcastle, to say, come up with a plan that looks appropriate for your site to provide affordable housing, and lots of discretion. And then over time, they now have more explicit provisions in place. But at first, they started with if you're going to do a development with housing in this area, you must work with the development director of community development to come up with. So 2 different approaches that could be used, but basically driven by our experience in working with a number of other cities who now do have linkages in areas like, very similar to this, Sammamish and Newcastle, Issaquah, Mercer Island, Bellevue have done provisions along those lines. And so we're just trying to preserve that opportunity for you as you do that more detailed master planning into the future.
So if I could, City Manager Stowe had wished to take a second after public comment, and I failed to acknowledge
Thank
that.
you. Well, speaking of the Community Development Director position, I want to introduce and recognize the city's new Community Development Director, Tom Burdett. Tom comes to us from the city of West Jordan, Utah. Also has experience in similar capacity of an Oak Harbor in this state. So we want to welcome Tom here today. This is his second day on the job, and I certainly want to introduce him before you pose the question to him this evening.
Thank you so much. Tom. Thank you so much. Welcome to the City of Bothell. It's a pleasure meeting you, and glad to have you here with us this evening.
And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Good.
Do we get to start asking him hard questions now?
Right off the bat, and then give him grace when he may not have the immediate Bothell Code answer. Good.
So I'm looking on page 154 of our agenda packet, and that's in the issues matrix. And so I'm looking in the comment section, and I guess I was hoping to see actual proposed policy language or goals language that the council could, look at and decide yay or nay or modify. Were you and staff kind of waiting for direction to see if we even support that approach before any language gets drafted? Because one of the examples I see here is that that Arch believes the requirement to provide affordable housing should be in place now for new residential development, and the requirement should be relatively high, like recommending 25% of new residential dwelling be affordable either to the 50, 60, or 80% median income household. So how are we going to translate that into policy goal and action language that we can digest up here?
So regarding proposed policy or code language in general for any of these issues, you can probably imagine that we were somewhat challenged just to pull the issues matrix together. There's a lot of information there. It took a lot of staff time to do that. Because we hadn't received really concrete direction from council on any of the issues yet, we hesitated to bring forward actual language, not knowing which direction you wanted to go. But on this particular issue, we could certainly bring you some language next week. We have it ready to go, and we'd be happy to put that in the packet for you.
Okay. Well, I'm in support of that. Some language options like what Arthur has explained for us. I'm hoping the rest of council is supportive of that general direction so that staff can provide us some draft language.
We'll have the opportunity for others to maybe chip in during their time.
Okay, during their time?
Yep.
Okay. And then along those lines, too, talking about the provision of RAC zones, also providing amenities like parks. I would like to see that language, and I'll ask the rest of council in their time if they would like to as well. It sounded like in the Canyon Park Business Center that all of those roads interior are privately owned, and so if they were to develop to the higher intensity provided by RAC, it sounds like they would be providing that road infrastructure because those are private roads. Is that correct? So maybe that earlier discussion I had about ensuring that infrastructure was provided is a moot point, because it would have to be, because they're all privately owned interior in the park.
Well, they are currently privately owned, but one of the issues that we would look at as part of the planning study for that area would be that issue. Okay. So that doesn't necessarily preclude that they might not be public in the future. Okay. That's I'm not speaking on behalf of the city saying that we should do that. I think it's just one of the issues that we would need to explore as part of that study.
Okay. Can I ask another question?
Yeah. Yeah, you
so,
have 4 minutes.
Gary, could you talk a little bit now about the RAC proposed amendment for Country Village, and how the proposal is to expand the Red Barn Village designation to include Country Village? And can you talk about that some more? And then do you see affordable housing and parks provision applying in this area, or are there characteristics of this area that make it distinct from the Canyon Park Business Center?
Well, I think, as Arthur already mentioned, any time that you do a zoning or plan designation change, that is a reasonable opportunity to place an affordable housing provision there. So I think our preference would be to see some affordable housing provision placed on that expanded Red Barn Village as well. As Arthur has already said with Canyon Park, it could be a similar placeholder. I don't know what the amounts would be, the percentage, or what the ultimate amount would be. It might be different for Country Village versus Canyon Park. I'm not sure, but Arthur might be able to expand upon that a bit more.
Or later, since it sounds like you're gonna have a conversation with staff.
Right, yeah, we'll work with them. I think, we gave you what's in the memo here, sort of the high end of what we've seen. We've seen anything from 10 to 25% and stuff, and it really does depend on the circumstances of individual neighborhoods or sites. And so it would take understanding, and again, whether or not for now to get something on the books, you do more of a placeholder approach, so that it could be researched more and still allow the zoning to go through now. That's something for you to deliberate on a preferred approach.
Great, thank you.
And then Gary, I'm having a mind blank. So we haven't really gone through all the sub area elements. So if we have additional issues, would you like? I assume you want those sent to you as soon as possible to add to the matrix of issues. Because one of the things that I hadn't had a chance to talk about was the proposal to add breweries to the OPLI designation on the north side of Riverside Drive. And I haven't heard much from the neighborhood on that. I'm not sure how much they are aware of that. But I understand the idea of the attractiveness of building and providing for a brewery district. I think that would be pretty exciting. But we have heard concerns from that neighborhood about the traffic on Riverside Drive. And it's not going to be that terrific of an amenity to have a brewery district if people are stuck in traffic. And there's one element there in that area that could contribute to the non-motorized traffic flow, which is the King County right-of-way that exists there currently. And there's a small portion of the trail completed in front of the Adult Day Center. And so I would like to see proposed language to complete a multi-use trail along the entire north side of Riverside Drive where the existing right-of-way is. We had talked about that years ago and then kind of just dropped it. But I think if we want to create this inviting brewery district, we have an opportunity to make it really accessible and vibrant by adding a multi-use path, which would serve that area, not just at a brewery district, but it could serve as a huge loop for bicyclists that use the Sammamish River Trail and then also use that sort of southern trail and create the continuous loop. So I would like to see specific language encouraging or requiring the development of that path, multi-use path, as development occurs, should the council approve the proposal from Planning Commission.
Great, thank
And I
you.
guess I'm out of town.
You are, but I'm going to continue on with what you brought up. Curious, are you wanting development to build it as development occurs, or are you wanting to allocate funds to see it completed at one time?
Well, I would like to see development build as, to build the trail as the development occurs. And, you know, it's a cost, and we have a lot of other needs, but at least if we designated that as a trail for future use and for future development with the intent, have that express intent in the comprehensive plan that would be the eventual build-out goal. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah, interesting.
And who knows? You know, you never know when it's going to, you know, what's going to compete well at a grant level for, you know, multimodal transportation.
So I'm curious with staff, I mean, what ability do we have to require on that King County right-of-way for development that's occurring on Bothell property?
Well, first of all, to partly address Councilmember Sandberg's first part of that, Bruce, what is that figure number? One of the figures in the transportation element. Within the PROSAP, figure PA8 does show a non-motorized trail in that location. So we have at least some policy direction in the PROSAP already.
So if development did take place there, there would be a requirement to continue the path in front of that new development.
I haven't read the language in the PROSAP. I'm not sure at what level it requires or encourages that, but it at least is shown on a map. So there's some policy basis in the map already.
Yeah, you would certainly hope the developers would see the benefit of that to the area.
Yeah. Regarding the King County Trail, I'm not the best person to ask about that. That might be a question better directed. I don't know. I don't want to put Aaron on the spot, but it's probably a question better directed to our public works staff and perhaps for a response for a future meeting.
Yeah. Are you prepared to answer that?
The temptation to have John answer it is strong, but so we did, I believe, require that when the adult day health center constructed, I believe we did require that they improve the park or the trail alignment along there. So I think there is a precedent for it, and we have talked to King County previously about encouraging that continued development of the trail. So I think it's within our realm.
Yeah. So I got a question for you, and this directly from my 16-year-old son. When we're driving along East Riverside Drive, we have the sharrows, we like to call them, and there's bikes going 5 miles per hour on a 25-mile-per-hour road. Are we allowed to go around them, or do we have to wait as they go 5 miles per hour on that road?
That's probably more of a...
She's going to tell us the rule, and then we're going to know it, and then we're going to have to follow it.
Oh.
That's probably
But
more
the
of
reality
a
of the
police
sharrows are
enforcement
there.
issue. Oh.
So I'd love to know the answer to that, and it's certainly an issue on East Riverside Drive, which is why 2 years ago I was concerned about the sharrows on the road, but it certainly the bikes need to move at the speed of traffic, is my understanding, and they're not currently. So having a pedestrian path, a multimodal path, would, I think, be a great benefit to get the bikes off the road or find some way in the very near future to widen that road to the standards that would allow bikes to go along there. But
So we will add this issue to the matrix and try and provide some language for you.
good. So my combined time with Councilmember Sandberg's time has taken both of our times away. Who is next? Deputy Mayor Spivey.
Great, thank you. What does the added language and this bike lane issue, what does that do to the SEPA process?
We already have a figure in the PROSAP, so it may be something that's already covered that we don't need to reanalyze under SEPA, but that's something we'd have to look at. For any issues that Council brings up at this point, we have issued SEPA on the plan update. That was issued on May 22nd. Some issues may be covered under the SEPA determination, some may not. We would need to look at each of those individually and determine whether they are covered or not, and come back to you with an answer.
So what do we do if we want to move something forward and it's not covered by this current SEPA?
The timing on this has been difficult because, as Council knows, we have a June 30th deadline. So we had to back our dates out, and we had to issue SEPA by May 22nd in order to be certain of meeting that June 30th deadline. For issues that are not covered in the SEPA determination, we would have two choices, I think. We would either have to reopen SEPA and miss the deadline, or we would have to bring those issues back later, either later in the year or as part of next year's docket.
So we have nobody has any idea what this Councilmember Sandberg's request is going to do as far as SEPA goes, then?
Not standing here at the podium at this moment, I don't know.
Okay. Mayor, I'd like to reserve the rest of my time for later.
Okay. Councilmember Rayum or Evans?
Oh, a couple things. Just quickly on affordability housing. I think the Planning Commission recommended, and this isn't related to, it's my understanding that the affordability housing issue is related to the Canyon Park Business Center and Country Village. That's kind of what it's defined or reserved to at this point in this comp plan update. Is that correct?
I believe that's a correct statement because the thing about those two areas is that we are changing the plan designation and zoning, which provides the opportunity to put that requirement on there.
And I like the idea of having staff come back with some recommendations on that or whatever. But this isn't necessarily a deal breaker right now because, as the Planning Commission was stating, this whole area is going to come back for a comp plan update in 2016, 2017, where, at least in this specific area, that could be addressed at that time if we didn't get it resolved in this particular comp plan update. Is that correct?
I think I'd like Arthur to respond to that because Arthur has some specific concerns about potentially missing the opportunity right now, and that's the purpose for his recommendation for a placeholder.
Well, and I understood what Arthur said. I appreciate that. But we don't know what the update's going to be. And at that time, we are going to be updating it. We are going to be taking action. It seems like to me that then we would be could specifically address that issue as part of the plan update.
It's a possibility. Sure. If the council, Arthur would like to speak to the council if that's
sure.
Something you'd like to hear from.
You bet. I'd like.
I think what partially prompted us bringing this issue, responding to Councilmember Sandberg's earlier comment from a few weeks ago, is we have had a couple cities that did change their zoning, came back 3 or 4 years later, then asked the affordable housing question and was told by essentially their legal staff at that point because they weren't and that 3 or 4 years down the road they weren't further increasing capacity, that they said the opportunity had kind of gone out the door when they had taken the first action 3 or 4 years earlier. So that's why we're recommending sort of a placeholder to create a cleaner conversation going into the future. Now, in 3 or 4 years, you might decide that's not appropriate and you could remove it. That's easy to do. What's harder to do is if you, at that point, given the actions you're taking this year, sort of ask for something, saying, well, we gave you something 3 years ago, we're looking for something today. So we found a number of situations where that's more challenging to do.
Great, and I appreciate that, and you've mentioned that before, and so I understand your position on that. We do reference the trails and parks and things, which we're all supportive of. We do require mitigation fees for all of our residential development. They pay a mitigation fee for park improvements and that type of thing now. So I guess I'm unsure how, as much as I want to see those parks certainly in the Snohomish County side where we're very deficient in parks. I want to see those, but I'm not sure how we put that entire load on top, and maybe that's not what we're indicating, but we do have a process in place right now, a method through our mitigation fees for collection of that. How much more the development community can bear is something that I would be interested in seeing how that would work. So I did go through the matrix in detail, and I appreciate what the staff has done there, and I think they've given some good recommendations. And I think it would be good to go because this does address most of the issues that have been raised, and hopefully at our next meeting or very soon we could go right down that list, that matrix, and say we agree or disagree or what the recommendation is. I think we're talking around the issues a lot here, but this gets us to the specifics, and we need to get this done. So I would hope at the next meeting, maybe that's, I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but at least that focuses in on those specific issues and actions, and we can hopefully get a good share of these knocked out by the next meeting. So I appreciate what staff's done. I think they've given us some good alternatives to discuss here, and to me it seems like that would be a good way to get through that. I had specific comments on some of the sub-area issues, which we haven't got through all of those yet, but I guess we would cover those by going through the matrix. So I guess I would hope that that's where we could start next week, is by going starting at the top of the matrix and just working straight through it, and at least knocking off what we can, if not all of them, and narrow the process. And I mean, we really need to adopt this document on the 16th or something. So,
do you have more questions?
Did you say I have questions?
Yeah, are you?
I have a lot of questions that hopefully will be answered as we go through the matrix. So
okay.
I'm fine with that at this point.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Evans. Councilmember Rayam. So I had the same concern, Councilmember Evans, because I have this matrix here and I have different comments, and I feel like I can just talk about them, and I don't really know where it's going or not, whether I'm being heard or not by, well, obviously we're being heard by staff, but I just don't really, it's not exactly clear what the process is forward to getting to the finish line. So that'd be helpful to know at the next meeting. So with my 6 minutes, I want to touch on, I got less than a minute for each thing here. The concrete medians, so that's something that I have also noticed, and I've seen just a complete variety of medians installed in our city, and it doesn't look good. And we have different ones in different places, different colors, concrete not, vegetated not. And I did talk with the city engineer about that, I think in January of this year, and he said that there was some efforts to create a standard for the medians, and I don't expect that tonight because I haven't raised that to Public Works at all. But I think as part of the conversation of changing the code for the concrete, or not for the concrete, for the medians, it'd be nice to have the what was being proposed by staff as your typical medians that we're looking for going forward. You know, a certain width, do they become vegetated? You know, and try to make a decision about those things. What color is the concrete going to be? How is it going to be stamped if it is going to be concrete? So I'd like to see a lot more conversation around what the medians are going to look like. The affordable housing requirement for the RAC upzones in the Canyon Park and the Country Village areas, I do support those. I think we should put them in there. I think it's a good thing that in a regional growth center where transit is focused, that if you have affordable housing there, people that don't have cars, you know, they have a place to have affordable housing and transportation, and then couple that with, we need to also put in there provisions to provide parklands or some sort of amenity so children have a place to play in these low-income areas. So I do support that moving forward. So let's see here. So the accessory dwelling unit, that's a code change that we're looking at, and I do want to look at the setback requirements for residential units. the existing setbacks that we have. I'd like to also know what the setbacks are for a shed, if you're going to install a shed in your backyard, and then be able to look at that from an educated standpoint. I was trying to look up setbacks right now. I can't find them on the fly, but I think that having an accessory dwelling unit would be a bit different than installing something else in your backyard. So it would be nice to know in our existing residential areas what kind of impact we're talking about to neighboring properties. Let's see here. So in the issues matrix, there's line 32, which is something that I think it's trying to address what I was bringing up last time, is that the current in multiple places in the natural environment section, it says, to protect and preserve. And the argument being that, what we have now is not healthy, so protecting and preserving it in the status it is in is basically not enough. And then we should try to raise that bar and just say restore. I mean, it doesn't really require a whole lot to just put that in there instead, because we are actually doing things as a city that intentionally restore habitat in our water bodies, and so I don't see why we wouldn't want that in there. I see the argument in the matrix, and I don't want to say viscerally, but I strongly disagree with the argument that the impacts have happened outside of our city, so we're just going to kind of lay down and let the water wash over us. If we take that mindset and apply it to the Puget Sound, is it okay if the Puget Sound dies then because everybody else around the Puget Sound destroyed it? I don't think that's really the case, and so kind of leaning towards leaning back and just saying, well, it's everybody else's fault that we take because we're at the bottom of the watersheds for the different creek systems that drain into our city. I just don't see that argument is justifiable scientifically or philosophically. So I'd like to know more about why staff feels that way. It says in the staff discussion here that we're at the bottom of the watersheds, and so there's nothing we can do. The other piece of it, too, is that a lot of the requirements do apply to smaller streams that we have total control over, so there's no reason to think that we couldn't restore some streams within this city. There's tributaries to North Creek, for example, that we have every control over, trying to make that a healthy stream. And so to say, well, the impacts to the main stem are from Everett, so we shouldn't do anything, I just don't see how that's founded. Along those lines, in line 38 of the matrix, it's on, if anybody's following, on page 151 of our packet. It says here, establish impervious surface limitations within all zoning districts. So the response is that that's an old way to go, and by the way, the 2012 Surface Water Design Manual alleviates a need for maximum impervious surface limitations in the comp plan, and that's not true. Impervious surfaces are only managed for a certain range of storms, it's like from a small storm to a heavier storm, and then outside of those, like even very small storms or specifically large storms, there's no controls. So the only thing that can help with large storms tearing up and destroying your creeks is to have a limitation on impervious surfaces. It is in the low impact development requirements that you're supposed to look at your code to try to make good decisions about your code so you don't have impacts to streams. And so again, that argument, I'd like to have some more discussion with staff about that, because it doesn't make any sense to me why we would lean on the 2012 Ecology Manual and say, well, that's enough, when it's not enough.
You've reached your time. Do you want
reached my time.
to finish your last question, and then we'll turn the floor over to Councilmember Lamb for the last 5 minutes?
So the last one is the accommodation of population. So we are looking at accommodating populations in King County, 4,158 people more than we're required to. And in Snohomish County, we're accommodating 2,127 more people than we're required to. And to me, that just all that means to me is that I'm going to be asked to pay more taxes for the infrastructure for all those people, because development doesn't pay for itself. So I'm a bit concerned about why we would go 6,000 plus over our target and anticipate or expect the public and the community, the businesses in our community to shoulder that cost. So I'd like to have some discussion around that and find out why we're expected to approve that.
Great. Thank you so much, Andy. Councilmember Lamb, are you prepared for questions?
I am. So we're just asking questions. I couldn't
Or
tell
direct
from the
them.
last speaker
No,
whether
it's-
we're asking questions or whether we were giving our opinions.
You can give your opinion and direction, whatever you like.
Great. So I really appreciate the work that staff has done, and I think on a high level, we've had a lot of conversation about, particularly about population allocation, so I think I'll start there. And I think there's a good deal of confusion in the community that the city of Bothell has the ability to opt out of the Growth Management Act, or that we don't have, that we can somehow look to either Snohomish County or King County and say, you know what, we don't want to take any more population. That isn't the case, and that isn't the case for a couple of different reasons. The first one is that it defies state law. Our United States Senator Maria Cantwell, when she was in the state legislature, authored the Growth Management Act. And she did that because she felt it was good for the environment to have growth that she knew was coming in the early 1990s, and which in fact has come to our state, to have that channeled into urban areas. Bothell is one of those areas. When we look at other communities in our area and we say, we're not going to take our share of growth, A, we're violating the law, B, we're basically telling another community, well, you need to take the growth that we don't want, and C, we would then have the potential of giving up our ability to make the decisions that we're making in this comp plan, which is where density should go in our city. Because if we said that if we publicly said, you know what, we're not going to accept these population mandates, we're simply going to ignore the GMA, any landowner who made a rezone application that we denied could then go to the Growth Management Hearings Board and say, you know what, Bothell has willfully said that they're not following the GMA. Growth Management Hearings Board could overturn our decision and say, you know what, you're wrong. You need to instate that individual zoning request for that particular region. So I think it's important that we get that foundational understanding first of why we're doing what we're doing here today. There are any number of individual items that we can talk about that are different. I'm sorry, can I help you?
Oh, we need to extend.
Okay, we'll extend until 10 o'clock.
Second.
Any discussion?
All in favor?
I guess you're calling the vote.
Matter of practice.
Any abstention? Any noes? Passes unanimously. We're extending it till 10. She wasn't wished for my ear for any other reason. But extend.
I believe that. So I think it's important that people understand why we're doing this. There's been a lot of frustration about, and I thought it was interesting, the comments about the impacts of growth, whether it be stormwater or traffic. The fastest growing area in our region is actually South Snohomish County, which is just outside of our borders. So when people talk about traffic and the burdens, and they're like, hey, we're getting all of this new population, that population has grown much, much more rapidly than growth inside the city of Bothell. And you can just look at the population statistics of Bothell to see that that's the case. The new high school, the North Shore School District is building, is in the unincorporated area of Snohomish County, because that's where the growth has been. All of that growth then, when they commute, pours into Bothell, and that's something that we have to deal with as a community. But I think it is unwise to say we're not going to, at this point, we don't want to take any more than the exact allocation that we have, because what that means is then we go back to people. We go back to the people who live on Norway Hill, who still have 1 acre lots, which are really a unique feature in urban areas, and we say to them, you know what, in 6 years when we do this comp plan amendment again, we need to adjust to more population. You're not going to be able to keep those 1 acre lots. They hold them very, very dear, and they hold them very sacred, but we're going to say, you know what, that's no longer justifiable, because we wanted to be right up to the line, and we didn't want to do anything more than that or plan for any more growth than we knew was coming. And the reality is we know this growth is coming. It's better for us as a community to plan for the growth. It's better for us as a community to invest in infrastructure that supports the growth. And I think as a community, one thing that I've heard a lot of people say, well, when 405 is told or 520 is told, what are we going to do? Well, one of the cool things is our mayor was before he was on the city council, was on a citizens advisory committee about State Route 522. And that citizens committee said, you know what, we want to realign State Route 522 because we know that tolling is coming on 520. We know that people are going to be pouring through our area. That's what the whole Crossroads project was about, was enabling traffic to move more quickly, and it has been. I support the recommendations that are currently in this plan. I think that some of the suggestions that have been made, obviously I wasn't here for the discussion, so I'm not going to be able to comment intelligently on those, but I believe that staff's recommendations in general are ones that I can support moving forward. There are some individual comments I have that don't really fit into a 6-minute time frame, but hopefully we'll be discussing this next week and the week after as well.
That's right. And this will be coming back to our meeting next week. We've already taken a motion at the beginning of the meeting to continue this to June 9th, and we'll be coming back on the 16th with ultimate approval is the plan. Deputy Mayor Spivey and then Councilmember Sandberg, quick questions because we're at the end of our time.
I believe I reserved some
Oh,
time.
you have time. Okay, you have your 4 remaining minutes.
I don't think I have, was it 4 minutes that I had left or
Yes.
so? 3? All right. Shoot.
Yeah, you went from 8:40 to 8:42.
Yeah.
It's the job I'm given by each one of you to keep track of these times.
Now my laptop's not bringing up what I wanted. Anyway, it looks like we're going to have some issues that may need to be reviewed as far as SEPA, and so I want my issue, the item that I brought up on the senior housing overlay with the Furmans, I want that considered with all the others that are being considered. I believe that maybe we can get around it the way you say there, things that are addressed in there. That I want to say it was on page 138 of the comp plan. That HHS-P28 was talking about dealing with developers, property owners, et cetera, on the needs for affordable senior housing. And so that may be the thing that keeps us from having to go through the SEPA process, as you mentioned earlier. But either way, as part of that Furman request, I still would like this to go through if we're considering other items, and it sounds like we're going to be considering other items. So, yeah, I'd like it to be part of this process. So,
good, absolutely, great, thank you. Is it a process question?
Yes, it's
Okay.
process, because we've all kind of said we have these kind of individual issues that are still lingering, and we haven't gotten them out in our 6-minute time. And if I would suggest that all of us, if we could just type them out and send them to staff as soon as possible, then that it can be added to this issues matrix, and then we're working off of a document, an issues matrix that everybody's little specific concerns are in there. And maybe, I'm sure they would like it before Friday, but maybe Friday would be
Well,
the
actually,
best.
the packet will have to be to Laura by Thursday at noon, if I'm not mistaken. So
But
we'll make our best effort to put all of them into the matrix for next week.
or we could just have a document provided late next week. And then the
Sure.
second thing was, not late next week, before the meeting next week. Is council in agreement that for Arthur Sullivan and staff to work on some options for including affordable housing language in the comp plan?
Are you
really like
talking
that.
specifically with the
In regards to the RAC zone?
ERC? I am not. Others?
I'm not in favor of that for the reasons I've articulated. That I think that unfairly burdens Snohomish County. I think we have affordable housing language in our comp plan. I'm happy to consider including more affordable housing language, but I don't support burdening Snohomish County freshly with things that have never been previously applied on King County.
And we had talked about not just applying it to the Canyon Park RAC zone, but uniformly to RAC zones.
But it still has the same net effect of new development has already occurred in King County. We have hundreds of units of new apartments that had none of that burden put on them, and now we're suddenly saying Snohomish County would slap it on it. If you're saying I want to put it only on the King County portion, I would consider it, but I would not consider it in Snohomish County.
So we need to wrap up because we are past the time that we've allocated at the beginning of the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Hassler.
Someone else is going to...
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Do we need to continue this then?
What?
Do we need to continue this?
We've already continued to next week. So thank you, Mr. Hassler. Next item on the agenda is AB 15073, is to consider approval of a street maintenance and public engagement plan with Aaron Lionheart, our Public Works Director.
Nope, you're good. So while I'm pulling this up, I want to take the opportunity to invite the City Council and any of the community to the 4th Annual Sustainamania. It's scheduled this Saturday at the Public Works Operations Center from 10 to 3. More information is available on the city's website, so hope you will all join us. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Excuse me. This one? This one. There we go. Okay, try again. At the council meeting, I believe it was in May, when council adopted the ordinance establishing the Transportation Benefit District, we had quite a bit of conversation about engaging the public in the conversation about street maintenance and the needs for additional funding. So the staff is working on a public engagement program, and the intent of the program will be to raise awareness about the city's existing programs for street maintenance, just in general, pavement preservation, as well as some sidewalk construction. Also want to describe the need that we have for revenues for these needs, and also to help us develop alternatives to bring back to the City Council and to the Transportation Benefit District Board for consideration. The methods we intend to utilize will be your standard publications, so the Bothell Bridge, for example. The city website and social media sites. We are currently working on some informational videos to be posted on the city's YouTube channel. Also community events, such as farmers markets, concerts in the park this summer. Also community presentations to community groups, PTAs. We have a spot at the Chamber open house coming up at the end of this month. We're also requesting that council consider appointing a task force or an exploratory committee of specific community members to be more focused in the educational aspect of this, to take on tours to various areas where they're implementing different pavement technologies, for example. So the public engagement timeline that we're proposing would be to begin recruitment for task force members after this meeting through the month of June, so that we can come back to council in July with some candidates to potentially appoint. Then if there is a task force appointed, then from August through November, we would be working specifically with that task force on tours and specific information sessions. And then also starting in September, we'll be having those greater community meetings that we hope will be informed by the conversations with the task force. The whole plan is to return to council in December with a recommendation for funding of our street needs that's based on the feedback that we receive from the community. So that is the extent of my presentation, and I'd like your questions and comments.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Aaron. Chris, I know that you had something that you want to bring up during this time. I wrote down your name on this during, yeah.
Well, I wanted to talk about if we're going to do a public engagement plan for streets, talk about a public engagement plan. It'd be a good time to also discuss a parks only bond.
Oh, that's what it was.
to get the community feedback on that, and it's very timely since we had a member of the public speak tonight about the possibility of purchasing 26 acres up around Shelton View Elementary area in 228th. So, but we can talk about that towards.
Yeah, I wonder if
the
we
end.
should take that up as a separate issue, potentially just focus on this, and then we can talk right immediately after we discuss this about that, and then fall into our last issue, which is WIBRA 8, your presentation. You've been working away on your computer. Good. So do you have any more comments for or questions for Aaron?
Yeah, I do. So from your timeline, it looks like are we working towards a date where we would have a request before the voters? I think we've previously discussed that our ability to levy a $20 councilmanic car tab fee would not be enough to cover our street preservation needs, and so it sounds like we would need to have something go before the voters. So do you have a particular election timeframe that you're shooting for with this timeline?
So with the recommendation to council in December, we believe we could meet the April election, I believe it is. So that would require that council would adopt, I believe, a resolution to take to the counties to put on the ballot. I believe that would have to happen in December.
And why would you do an April special election versus doing it in the primary or general of 2016?
And that's a possibility too. It's just that we are looking at the soonest we could possibly go, since this will need to be a part of the conversation with the biennial budget at the very latest for the 17-18 biennial budget.
Okay. And there is a cost difference for the city to try and put a measure on it in a special election versus a larger election, like a general election?
Yeah, it just totally depends on who you're sharing it with and how many other things you have on the ballot and other entities have on the ballot. So it's hard to predict.
I thought you told us once before it could be anywhere from, say, $5,000 if it's a busy ballot versus $60,000 or so if you're the only issue on the ballot.
I believe that was the spread. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Others? Councilmember Evans.
Thank you, Aaron, for this information. And it's so interesting to sit here and hear all the needs from the public and things, and then they may be looking at a specific issue and things where we're looking at the whole pie and everything that needs to be developed. And there are so many big issues that we need to get our arms around. I think we almost need to do, maybe we need to do those separately. You know, I like this idea of looking at maintenance and that type of thing. I certainly like the idea of a parks bond issue at some point in the future, you know, and there may be other major things that we need to look at. I guess if we try to do too much with a task force, that we may not get anything accomplished. We do have a park board that hopefully could, with the assistance of our new director, could take on a community process to look at a bond issue and how those projects are evaluated and what goes into that. I certainly would like to see that. But I think it's probably better to keep them separate right now. And then the next question is, what has priority on the ballot? What goes on the ballot first? Or do they both go on the ballot at the same time? Or, I mean, there's just a lot of big questions to be answered here. And I'm glad that we're starting that discussion, or that discussion will be starting. But I think there's a lot of time, and I don't know that how fast you can force this. But I'm glad we're starting the discussion, and I hope that it can go somewhere, and we can get get input from the public and get their support on some of these issues, because there's certainly a lot of them out there. So,
Does anybody have questions for Aaron?
Councilmember Lamb.
So, Aaron, when you're recruiting, what are we going to look for in identifying people to recruit for this committee?
Well, I think you've heard some folks who would have a stake in this process. We've heard from quite a few people who are concerned about pavement preservation, for example, and for building those small remaining connections in sidewalks and various street maintenance issues. So my thought would be to recruit from some of those folks that we've heard from before and also open it up to the greater community to say, are you concerned about this and are you interested in learning more? Because part of street maintenance is that it's not fun and like parks are. I think it's easier to drum up some interest in participating in a process to look at parks and to talk about parks than it is streets. So we recognize that we have a real responsibility to educate the community, and hoping that we can find some task force members who are willing to talk about not only the issues that they're concerned with, so crosswalks at schools, but broadening that conversation to look at the full realm of issues that we need to deal with as far as our street fund.
So it's kind of going out, it sounds like going out and looking to people who currently sort of have this may be slightly unfair to put it this way, but kind of have an axe to grind with respect to inadequacies in our current transportation infrastructure.
Some of those folks would be good participants, as well as just anybody who is interested in learning more about the city's street maintenance.
And so the idea is that we would have people that you'd go out and you'd say, hey, whoever's interested in serving on this committee, we'd like to do it. And I'm assuming from your answer what you're saying is that people who are concerned about that are probably more likely to volunteer to do that, and maybe would. And then the end goal here is that they would look at they would go out and give us some feedback about what the deficiencies are, and and then are we believing or seeking their input in terms of priorities as to what would be included in some kind of a funding package? Is that kind of the idea?
Yes, that's kind of the idea. And also to help us develop what that engagement process looks like to the greater community as well, to work through some of those issues with the smaller group before we take them prime time.
I appreciate that very much, and I think your approach is a sound one. I do have a comment that's not a question, but
We could take a brief pause.
Sure.
Comment. City Attorney Beck.
Yeah, I wanted to just insert one thing here. When we talk about ballot measure, that will be an action of the TBD. And what we're doing here today is an action of the council, just in a general public outreach program. We want to be careful to separate the two. This is a public outreach program to get the feedback from the community and to involve the community in this. It is not necessarily a precursor to a ballot measure. That may be one of the solutions that the council identifies as the TBD board when you get into and put that hat on. You want to think about this TBD board, though, as you put your hard hat on or whatever, because it is really a separate body and a separate action. So we want to keep the two, this public engagement process, separate and sort of on its own track, and then the TBD and the ballot measure, potentially a ballot measure or other actions the TBD may take, is a separate matter. We just don't want to get the two intertwined too much, because it limits what we can do in our public outreach program if we get the two lockstepped and too connected.
Okay, great, thank you. We are at the end of our time for this, but let's try to get through everybody. Deputy Mayor?
Great, thank you. Director Leonhardt, in the executive summary, we mentioned, and I'm trying to be mindful of the city attorney here on his recent comments, that we established our TBD, and then this process is to engage the public to determine an acceptable funding level for street maintenance, pavement preservation, and sidewalk construction. I would like to include in this public engagement traffic calming. I think there's definitely a need, and it's been expressed tonight, a need for traffic calming, and I think it kind of goes hand in glove with those other things that are in there, especially with sidewalks and crosswalks and things like that. And so I would hope that my fellow council members would be supportive of that request. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. I did interrupt you, Councilmember Lamb, during you finishing up your comments.
So this is a comment, and it's not a question. I have I've sent a letter or sent an email to the city manager and the assistant city manager, as well as our mayor, about this item. That I think there is some technology that's available to us to what is called like a checkbook program. It's used by the city of New York. It's used by a number of other cities around the country, and it allows citizens to have a very easy to, or a more easy to understand view of municipal finances. And I think it's important before we ask for any more taxes or before we pass any more taxes of our own that we have that program in place. I think it's really important that people be able to put it into context, because I think right now part of what we're struggling with, I mean, I've heard a lot of people make different comments about council or about funding needs, is that there isn't really a level of understanding of what our current funding needs are, as well as what our current funding sources are. And I know, I've heard a lot of people refer to costs of various capital projects, whether it be Horse Creek or the City Hall, and not really put that into a context of what we have as a community or what we need as a community. So I guess I would say my support for doing this kind of a public engagement is contingent upon having that program in place, because I think it's going to be useless to go out to people, because I think obviously people who have bad streets in front of their house or are afflicted by that, yeah, they're going to come out and they're going to say, I'd like to have more money for streets, or I'd like my neighbors or others to raise their taxes to pay for more streets. Until you understand how streets fit in with traffic calming, fit in with parks, fit in with other capital needs, and fit in with the maintenance and operation needs of our city as a whole, and fit into our operating budget needs, you're just kind of shooting in the dark. And I think that I think that's a lesson that we learned with Prop 1, is that I don't know that we did a great job of letting people know what the finances of the city of Bothell are. The finances of the city of Bothell are actually very, very good. They actually compare very, very well to other municipalities, but I don't think we did a good job of telling that story. And so I think before we do this, in my view, it's important that we have that foundational level of education about where we spend money, how much money goes to what projects, what are the capital commitments we have as a city, and how we move forward. So I totally support what you're doing, but I think that's a component that needs to be in place first.
Okay, thank you. Who was first? Councilmember Sandberg and then Councilmember Rayam.
I agree with that. During our biennial budget process, I had asked that we go through something like a Budget 101, where we take the time to educate citizens about how a budget is created and how money is spent, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there. So I completely support this approach, because I think you're right. I think that before we go and ask for money, we need to make the case that there's a reason why we're asking, and so I'd love to take a look at the checkbook program. I think that's a great idea, and maybe that level of engagement precedes or works in parallel with this process. I see the process that you have laid out. I envision it being a little bit of a more drawn-out process, and certainly if it's going to include information about understanding municipal finances better. I had brought up the idea of engaging the public with the public outreach activity regarding parks to get information, of course not necessarily leading to a bond issue, but using, since you're going to be in the public and engaging them on this topic, to also to get feedback about how to move forward with providing for our park needs in the city. So, but there's I understand what Councilmember Evans says. Do you put two issues before the voters and ask them to, do streets and parks? Do you separate them? And then they feel, so at one instance they feel like you're asking me for too much, and then and if you do it another way, you're nickel and diming me by asking me, one after the other. And that's why I think if we're good at making the case, then we can be more successful in providing the services, the street preservation, the parks, the other services, if we're completely transparent and take a real educational approach.
Thank you so much. It's an interesting program. Hopefully everybody has a chance to get online and look at it. Councilmember Rayam?
I'll just make it quick. I agree with Deputy Mayor to include traffic calming in the list, and taking a step back and trying to educate people on the funding of the city, I think is a good idea as well. So that's all.
Okay. So just reading council and the questions that I heard tonight, I don't know that I would hear a motion to move forward with this unless I misunderstood people. Councilmember Evans?
Well, some great points have been brought up here, and I do think we need to do a better job of explaining to the public what our needs are, what our funding options and our alternatives are, that type of thing. So it would be interesting to know from the staff, and that's a big, I think that's a pretty big topic. I don't know how you get it condensed down to the point that you get an understanding, but if we don't try, we don't ever get there. So I guess I would be interested in hearing from the staff how they might construct that, or how we might get that big part of the pie out there sooner than later, and then followed up by these various other items. I hadn't heard of this program. It sounds interesting, but I do agree. We need to, in our budgeting process, we need to make sure the public understands what the needs are. We keep talking RFA is another option on the table. But we hear the public saying, "No, don't raise my taxes," but then we also get a report from our fire department that says our costs are going up. And I hate to use the old cliche, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. Sooner or later, we're going to have to pay for our public safety needs. So somehow that general education of our public is just so important, and I hope it can be easy, but I'm not sure it can be. But at least maybe we ought to take a run at it, and maybe hold off on some of these things at least until we get some of that bigger picture looked at.
May I pose a question, Council? So if, not necessarily that program, but if we did incorporate general education about city finances, both revenues and expenditure side, into this process, would that make it any more palatable? Because it was part of the conversations that we've been having on the staff end for what true public engagement looks like, is really setting the stage on all of this instead of just being really focused on streets.
Anybody want to answer?
I'll answer that. I think that this is a palatable plan. I think it's just palatable when the stage has been set. And I think the challenge is, I think, seeking out stakeholders, whether it be on Prop 1 or on this or on street maintenance, that are focused specifically on that issue. I think we're elected as a council to see the whole forest, and I think it's important that we have a program that enables the public to go on our website and see how we spend money and see how we raise taxes, get revenue comes into the city and revenue goes out. I think that's really important. And I think my concern is not that this wouldn't be a good process or that it wouldn't do it. I'm concerned that we would have a situation like Prop 1 where we go through the end of it. And I think a lot of the reason that Prop 1 failed was because people didn't have a fundamental understanding of the city's finances. And I think that needs to be addressed as a foundational matter before we engage on specific, because pavement is a huge issue. You and I are 100% agreement on pavement. It also isn't the only issue. I mean, as Councilmember Evans indicated, fire, RFA is another issue. All these things intertwine, and I think until we set the table for that understanding for our citizenry, that an average person can log online and see our finances in a way that they can read and understand, I think we're going to go. I think we would end up in April of next year in a ballot, and I think we would lose. And that I think is not what anybody wants, except for maybe people who always vote against ballot measures like these. But I think that's just my opinion.
Anybody else want to speak to that? Deputy Mayor?
So I guess a couple things. One is, if we chose to go to this program for our citizens to look at our finances, what type of timeline to implement something like that? Is that something that we could implement fairly quickly while still moving forward with this this task force for them to start doing their work, and then while the program's being put into place here in the city, and then the public can start looking at that? Is it something that two things can run concurrently and educate the public while the task force is doing its work leading up to an election?
I guess I would say I would ask the city manager to circulate the material that I sent him so that everyone on council can have the same. And I didn't ask him to do that. I probably should have when I send it to him to have so that everybody can have access to the same information and consider that. I don't know the answer to that as a technical matter. My sense is it probably could be adopted within a year or within 6 months. It's a software program. It does require a lot of work. It's not something that you can just kind of push it into our finances. It requires our finance team to do a lot of heavy lifting.
Okay.
But I think the reality is, I think it's important work. I think it's work that'll help our citizens have a better and deeper understanding of what our finances are. And so I would defer to our city manager and our assistant city manager, who would, I think, have a much better technical understanding of what that entails.
We just started looking into what it would take in terms of staff resources to implement such a program, as well as its cost. I would suspect, though, anything of value is going to be very staff intensive in terms of inputting data. And so it's not going to be a very quick solution. If it were, it's probably not going to be that very valuable for us, something we could probably do very quickly just in our normal communication methods. But if we want it to be interactive and have citizens gain a learning experience from that program that relates to how we budget, it's
Right.
going to take some time to develop.
Yeah, I understand. So I guess, Director Leonhardt, what does this do to what we've asked you to do up front if we wait for this? I mean, if we wait 6 months or 9 months to start this process, are we just pushing it back that far? Is that what we're doing? Or is there a need that we have to really come up with in that time to deal with some of the issues we have out there?
Well, this was an aggressive schedule from the staff perspective, with the goal to have information to provide to the City Council before the next budget process, and some options to remedy our issues with the street fund going forward. But it's certainly council's direction is our marching orders. So.
Well, that I understand, but I also want to be able to work with staff to get the right things done also. I would I would support.
Are you going to make a motion?
Well, I guess I would support getting the information from the city manager to all of us and dealing with the program on finances, and then coming back to this after we make a decision on that. And if I need to make that in the form of a motion, then I will.
Okay.
Okay, I'll make that in the form of a motion, that we get the information on the program that Councilmember Lamb gave to the city manager with maybe a brief staff report on it, so we can give direction on that. And once we give direction on that, we address the task force issue here.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? Councilmember Evans?
Just quickly, I think this is an important issue that needs to be resolved, and my concern is doing this program that Councilmember Lamb mentioned is going to be very staff intensive, which I think our staff has pretty overflowing plates right now. I'm sure that this has been done someplace else. There's got to be someone who's created this overall model or something that explains to the public in a generic way what the city's financial fiduciary responsibilities are and things. And if it meant finding some money to have a consultant help put that together sooner than later, I would be in favor of that, because I do think it's important that we get it done, because there's so many other issues out there. Looking forward to that.
Yep. I'll speak to your second, and Deputy Mayor.
Sure. So there is a program. There's a software program, but as the city manager indicated, it's you have to have good data go in to have it be meaningful. So there absolutely is a program. There absolutely are probably consultants who can help us implement that program, but it requires staff time. As the city manager indicated, if you do a slapdash job, you could probably throw something up pretty quickly. But I think what it will require is our staff to invest a significant amount of time to identify the data, put in the data, but there absolutely are well-established, both software programs and consultants who could help us implement this. It just that isn't sufficient to make this a quick process. It's also going to require additional time. So I believe this is the right motion. I think this is something that will enable the process that our director has ably laid out to work well and to be more likely to be successful if we take this approach. And I think it's something that honestly our citizens are really kind of crying out for, which is an ability to, on our website, come in, interface, understand the city's finances, and be able to comment and participate in the life of the decisions that we make as a council and as a community about how to spend money. So I support this motion.
Great. Deputy Mayor, and then Councilmember Sandberg.
As speaking to my motion, I think that the software program, it sounds like it's something that, one, our citizens are asking for, but two, this may not be the first vote that we have since Prop 1, and to have something in place for our citizens to be educated on the finances for any proposition or ballot measure that we move forward that deals with our finances, I think it's important. And I don't want to be running I don't want the TBD to be running a ballot measure that is destined to fail without proper education and understanding of the public of the process that we're asking them to participate in. So I think it's right now the prudent thing to do to address how we want to educate the public on our finances, and then come back once we establish that process to come back to this and look at this.
Thank you. Councilmember Sandberg, and then Rayum.
I'll be supporting the motion, and if we do move forward with whatever the program name was, checkbook, I think that would be a great project for a finance or economics student. So we should find somebody for the summer that needs some employment with a really cool project.
Interns. We love interns. Yeah, great. Councilmember Rayum, are you interested in speaking to this matter?
I'm fine. I'll support the motion.
Okay. Everybody's had a chance to speak. We're actually going to see if these little voting things work. So the motion on the floor was made by Deputy Mayor Spivey, seconded by Councilmember Lamb. Have our city manager review the option for the checkbook program and see how that could be implemented. Everybody could place their vote, and a clerk display. Passes unanimously with Councilmember Agnew absent and excused. So the next on our agenda, looking at the time, it is 9:39. Last item is, because I don't believe there's any city manager's report, is a WIRA 8 discussion. Is that correct? And Councilmember Rayum, you were going to lead a discussion in that?
I thought, Councilmember Sandberg, did you have something you wanted to lead off with the discussion?
Well, we received the good news that Forterra is working with the mayor and his partnership to purchase the back 9, and so that's terrific news. But then we also received an email within the last couple of days from the director of WIRA 8 that the Senate budget is proposing excluding using certain grant funds for acquisition. And when I read that, I thought, well, that sounds like that affects us. And so if the reason why I wanted to add that to the agenda is that if the ability to our ability to apply for grant funds for acquisition to say help pay back the Forterra purchase is compromised because of a budget, then maybe we as a council need to send a letter to the legislature supporting a position that preserves the ability to use those grant funds for acquisition. And we have our expert, our WIRA 8 expert here.
So I can add to it a little bit. So it's the Puget Sound Acquisition and Restoration Grant Program, and what's currently in the Senate budget is to limit that to just restoration and not to be used for acquisition. And the funds are state funds that are allocated down to local governments for acquiring land. So it's hugely important to cities and counties to have access to those funds for acquisition. So I have been actually working on this independently, and it'd be great if the council wanted to support a letter to send. I have a template letter that we could send. It's too late right now to sit down and read it to you guys, but it should be sent pretty soon. I already sent one on my own accord as the vice chair of the WIRA 8 Salmon Recovery Council and as a council member, individual council member.
Can I just pause you for a second? Is this in regards to purchasing the back nine?
No, it's just in general.
Okay.
So this is, of course, it means something about, and not just it's just acquiring land, period. So, for example, the city of Bothell, I almost forgot to mention this, the last Puget Sound Acquisition and Restoration Grant funding cycle, the city of Bothell pulled down $957,000 out of the $2.28 million that was allocated to our watershed this last year, which is huge for us, and that's the Sammamish River Side Channel project that is going to construction now. So, no, it's not just about the Wayne Golf Course, but obviously the Wayne Golf Course could be purchased with acquisition funds out of this funding pool. But it's bigger than just our city. So I think that's all I really have to say about it. I don't know if there's anything else, any questions?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to just step out. Okay. It just feels a little bit different.
Quick comment. If we think we've got a budget problem, the state's got one that they're dealing with too, a huge one. And so a lot of things are getting cut. And I was thinking about the acquisition side of this. I mean, we have done pretty well at getting acquisition grants for this type of land before. Land and Water Conservation Futures funding, the King County and things that, I mean, it's not like this is the only source for funding acquisition. There are quite a few other sources for funding open space. So, yeah, it would be nice to keep it in, but at least there's other alternatives at least out there that still can fund acquisition. Is that?
Yeah, it's going to take multiple sources to, if you want to talk about the Wayne Golf Course specifically, it'll take multiple sources of funding to acquire that kind of, that amount of money. So,
yeah, I'm just saying that I wasn't talking specifically about the Wayne Golf. I was just talking in general that there are acquisition funds to acquire open space and that type of thing. It would be unfortunate to lose this funding, but it's not like there aren't other alternatives. Never enough, but at least there's some alternatives to that. So
from a salmon recovery standpoint, this is our major fund for acquiring habitat projects. Acquiring land to do habitat projects. So it's important from that standpoint.
Yeah. I guess I would say two things. One is that I think this project kind of moved forward when Forterra became involved, and so I would, before we speak in on any individual effort, particularly as related to acquisitions, I think they're now sort of leading on this process, and they're the ones who are handling this. So I would want to make sure that our weighing in on that was consistent with their position or was helpful to them, because I think that's kind of in their arena right now as specific to acquisitions that are upcoming. With respect to the Senate budget versus the House budget, mean, there are any number of issues that affect municipalities in the Senate versus the House budget, some of which are better than others on both sides. And so I wouldn't want to parachute in on a single issue and say, I prefer the Senate budget over the House budget on this one narrow item without having the input of our city attorney. Because again, as Councilor Evans indicated, those negotiations are ongoing and are pretty close to being, are very, the gap is pretty small. I think when we weigh in, we should do so intentionally and do so in a way that really appreciates all of the different moving parts that are going on. And there are parts of the House budget that aren't particularly good for municipalities, including Bothell. And I wouldn't want to weigh in on one part of it and not weigh in on others. I think if we're really saying, like, look, here's where the Senate and House budget stands, here's where there are parts, here's where we like one part other than the other, here's the city of Bothell's position, I think that's something that's more comprehensive than simply parachuting in on a single issue and saying this is how we believe and this is where we're going to put the weight of this Bothell City Council as a secondary matter. As a preliminary matter, I'd really want to have understand from Forterra that they thought that would be helpful given the other things that they're dealing with at this point.
So, anybody else have a comment? Okay, Councilmember Ray, would you mind sending your draft letter or that letter that you have to the city attorney, and he could look at it and take into consideration the House budget, the Senate budget, and maybe come up with something that's for the council to possibly sign on to, either individually or as a whole council, to our elected officials down in Olympia. I think that your template would be a great starting point, and he can take, like I said, take into consideration both the Senate and the House budgets, and maybe, as Councilmember Lamb said, maybe a little bit of a higher overview, but that could be a WIRA 8 could be a bullet point in there, along with some other bullet points where we have support. So, would you mind doing that?
I'm sending it right now to the city.
Wait, thank
you said the city attorney?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that would be the best place to start at this point.
And I'm doing this anyways, so individually and as the WIRA 8 vice chair, so I'm covering that base. But since I wasn't even planning on bringing it up to you guys, because didn't.
Yeah. Okay. So we have about 13 minutes. Was there anything else tonight?
Move to adjourn.
I have a motion by Councilmember Lamb to adjourn, second by Councilmember Evans. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously with Councilmember Agnew and Mayor Freed absent and excused. We're adjourned.